make it onto the detail sheet, so I would have to revise that for him also. On regulations of the planning board, Town of Lunenburg governing the design, construction, and maintenance of off-street parking and loading areas, that were on page 3 at the bottom, number 18. There was a Scribner's error in the calculation for the required snow storage. It should read 640 square feet, not 478 square feet, as I have written on the plan. However, we've given plenty of snow storage area on the plans. It's just, it needs to be updated on the plan. Under stormwater management comments, which is on page 4, item 24, I revised the drainage calculations. However, when he had asked that we set the minimum time of concentration paths for the drainage, he asked that we set them to 6. However, there is an area where the time of concentration would be greater than 6. So I would need to just revise the drainage calculations to show that. It really won't have any effect on the pre or post conditions. It just needs to be ironed out. And on page 6, under general comments, item 46, I spoke with the, this has to do with the size and type of the water service. I spoke with the water department. I did get a pipe size from him, but I didn't get the material for the pipe. The pipe material needs to be listed on the plan. And on, at the end, additional comments, number 52, we're at the end of page 7. It says, due to revisions made to the drainage calculations, there are negligible increases in the peak rates of runoff from the pre-development to the post-development conditions at design point 2 for the 2-year and 10-year storm events. We show a pretty big decrease in the 100-year storm. However, when you look at the decimal places, I think there was a 5/100ths increase from pre to post in the 2 and 10-year storm at design point 2. You know, it's really a negligible amount increase. We felt that it would be okay the way that it's going to be, especially as I have to revise the drainage calcs. That might even go away. We've also submitted a list of waiver requests. Do you want to go through the waiver requests, or do you want to talk to the Whitman and Bingham engineer? Yes.
So in your updated report, the numbers for the existing conditions versus proposed conditions is significantly different.
Yes.
Can you explain why the existing conditions are so different between the two versions of the report?
Yes.
I can see the proposed conditions changing over time as you evolve the design, but I would have thought the existing conditions would have stayed consistent.
They won't stay consistent because one of the things that he asked that I updated the time of concentration paths. The time of concentration has a drastic
Okay, so that's what
effect
impacted
on
the existing conditions?
Right. I had to update the time of concentrations on both the pre and the post.
And so that's also what put you over the limit as well? Correct?
Yes.
So I mean, it seems like a small number, but as a percentage, it's not that insignificant. I have another question on that. Do the majority of all the new flow is all going into that pond in the back, correct?
Yes.
Oh, so these are not supposed to be changing all that much based upon the plan. They should have stayed relatively consistent with all the excess flow going into the pond. What's the pond primarily just seeps into the ground? That's the intended dissipation of that water?
Yes.
So it essentially goes into the groundwater, right?
Yes.
Okay. The usage of this facility is a landscape facility, correct?
Yes.
So my assumption was, given that it's a landscape facility, that it would likely have storage of fertilizer and pesticides. Is that been confirmed or not confirmed?
That is confirmed. The storage of such is inside the building.
The storage is inside the building?
Yes.
Is it safe to say that with the equipment moving in and out of the building, that you would likely have some amount of that material end up on the pavement of the property?
No, because the machinery is loaded inside the building.
Okay,
The building has an internal floor drain system, which goes to an oil water separator to a holding tank. I confirmed this with the plumbing inspector last week. So that needs to go into, it goes into a tight tank. It doesn't discharge to the
so there's
outside.
going to be no equipment, like on the back of trucks or anything like that, that's used for spreading fertilizer, it's going to be parked in the parking lot or anything like that? I find it hard to believe that we're not going to have material lined up in the parking lot. And the reason I'm asking the question is because based upon the Massachusetts Stormwater Guide, landscape facilities that include pesticides or fertilizers fall under the HPPL guidelines, and we've explicitly called out that this is not an HPPL site, and so therefore we don't have to care about the water runoff as such. And I'm just curious if, or I'm concerned that, you know, my son works in a landscape place, and, you know, they got the equipment sitting on the back of the trucks, and it's in the parking lot, and they have to sweep the parking lot to get the material that drops onto the parking lot. So I would assume if there's fertilizer and pesticides in the parking lot, that it could be subject to the water runoff that would go into that pond that would then dissipate into the groundwater. I was just wondering why we didn't consider that, or what the consideration is on that.
Yeah, it's the consideration is that all of he backs the trucks into the building where the storage of such materials are, and then he loads the trucks from inside the building. So really, the only use outside of the building is maneuvering the truck, backing it in, and then parking spaces for him and one employee.
So it's our assertion then that there's zero material that's ever outside of the building?
Correct.
Or I should say it's your assertion.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
All set?
Well, I mean, the nit was, the last nit was that on on those standards there, the mass standards, you claim that you meet them all, but technically you don't, because the runoff is higher, technically. So you do miss one of those standards.
And also, that's not really for us to waive, that's a state standard,
Oh.
the stormwater management.
Yeah, so your existing condition to proposed condition, you do have an increase of about, is it about 20%, 10%, 20%? So,
In the next set of drainage calculations, I've already seen how I can mitigate that.
awesome.
So I can, whether we want to call it
Hopefully it's
negligible or
mitigated
not, I
by
can-
changing something, not just modifying the calculation.
No, no. Modifying the calculations is going to be required on one bullet point with that time of concentration. The way that we're going to handle it is we are going to take some of the flow that's on the bottom side of the building, if you will, just looking at the plan. And we're going to direct that into the recharge basin also, which will decrease the,
All right, so that'll decrease the flow to those other two existing
Yes.
runoff spots. Okay, I'm good with that. So that's going to be an amendment that's forthcoming?
yes.
Okay, great. I don't have any more questions.
Okay, so do you want to continue with your document? You said you have a list of waivers?
Yes, unless you wanted to talk with Whitman and Bingham about the review first, and then go into the waivers.
Anthony, are you here for Wes? Okay. Do you want to talk now? Do you want him to go through his list of waivers and then come up?
I believe we touched upon all of the comments that we felt as though were not completely addressed.
Okay.
All the other comments we felt as though were addressed, so I have nothing really further to add. He really touched upon everything that was in our letter.
Okay,
And so as long as he just mentioned, those would be addressed, we would have no issues. And the waivers, as typical, up to the board to grant the waivers, many of which have been granted in the past. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to go over that with you.
okay, I had one question as the peer review. Does this fall into, or how does this not fall into multi-use? In Lunenburg, I know that two businesses can't be,
Yeah, I'd have to, I don't have the zoning bylaws with me, I'd have to check
Okay.
specifically on that. I'm not sure if any discussions have been had with the building.
it just hit me driving here when I went down. I did today remember to go in. And I went down and I sat in the driveway and looked, and then it hit me that, I know, for example, Conrad's, when they had the window cleaning upstairs, they could not do that because you couldn't run two businesses out of a location. So I don't know if we're doing it as a building location or, please,
I can comment on that.
thank you.
Sherry Gould, the attorney for the applicant, obtained that approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, so, because I was going to call
Weeks ago.
Mr. Savageau tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay,
That's what prompted, there's two review processes. One is with ZBA, and an additional building and additional use prompts development plan review with the planning board.
okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now you're on the waivers.
Okay. So given the type of use, and these waivers that we're requesting will run with the intended use of the site. They don't run with the site for themselves. So any change in use would require another development plan review. So what we're asking for is, we feel reasonable with respect to the proposed activities on the site for these two uses. So the first waiver we're looking for is zoning bylaw section 6.1.2.1. It requires striping of the off-street parking spaces. A waiver is requested to not stripe the parking lot, as there's only two proposed employees for the site. Next, zoning bylaw section 6125 and subdivision rules and regulations 5231 requires the final compacted pavement thickness for a minor subdivision roadway with a base course of 3 inches and top course of 1.5 inches. A waiver is requested to allow a reduction in pavement thickness at 2.5-inch base course and 1.5 inches of surface course. Zoning bylaw section 6435 requires a minimum driveway access road width for two-way traffic, 14 feet each way, with a 4-foot minimum width island with keep right signs. The existing driveway does not have this requirement. A waiver is requested to allow the existing 22-foot wide paved driveway with no island to remain for both uses based upon the anticipated use. Zoning bylaw section 6.4 and subdivision rules and regulations 8441A3 requires each site have one entrance and one exit, designed in accordance with the design requirements for driveway and entrances set forth in section 6.4 of the zoning bylaw, either divided by a lane divider strip at least 18 inches wide or separated by a landscape area, provided, however, that the access and egress may be shared by more than one use, provided that such shared access and egress is constructed at least to the standards for a common driveway as set forth with the planning board's rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land. Again, a waiver is requested to allow the existing 22-foot pavement with no width to remain for both uses based upon the anticipated use. Subdivision rules and regulations section 41046 requires at least 3 feet of cover required over all drains unless otherwise specified or approved by the board. Catch basin 1 has only slightly more than 1 foot of cover. If the board allows a reduction in cover, it should be verified that the type of pipe can be installed with the proposed cover. A waiver is requested to allow the pipe to be installed with a minimum of 1 foot of cover, and the pipe shall be 12-inch cast iron to handle vehicular traffic. Regulations to the planning board governing the design, construction, and maintenance of off-street parking and loading areas. This is section 251. Your letter might say 41046. It's 251. Interior driveways and/or service roads shall have minimum widths as follows: one-way traffic 15 feet and two-way traffic 30 feet. Dimensions in the driveway are not shown on the plans. A waiver was requested to allow the 22-foot paved driveway to remain for the anticipated two-way traffic. And under subdivision rules and regulations, it requires minimum radii for interior driveways and service roads which meet the requirements of the subdivision rules and regulations. A waiver is requested to allow construction of the parking and maneuvering area as shown on the plans, which meet the intended use of the applicant.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do you have anything you want to talk about on the waivers you just read?
Yeah, so I sat down with Josh a number of months back and figured out what he needs for his business to be able to get the trucks in, even with a trailer. We measured some turning radii of his vehicles, and we came out with this scheme. Again, when we're asking for these waivers, we're asking for these waivers for Josh and his business. They may not work for other uses, but if there are any other uses intended, they still need to come back to this board and go through development plan review, so that those waivers wouldn't be granted for another use. So I think the board can feel comfortable that we've really done some homework to be able to provide what the site will handle and the proper use of the site.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anthony? Do you have anything on the waivers?
Yeah, no, I mean, we concur with many of the waivers. Again, most of it falls on the board on what you feel comfortable with. In regards to the cover of less than 3 feet, just falls back on, we'd like to have that detail showing the, how the construction of that catch basin would be done adequately to make sure that that's built properly, which you can do it. Just want to make sure that the detail is there, so we're ensuring that it is done to a typical standard. Other thing to point out, on that catch basin with that minimal cover, it really isn't going to be susceptible to traffic loading. The pipe out of the catch basin goes from the back of the catch basin into the stormwater basin, which is not underneath pavement. So it's also not going to be susceptible to vehicular traffic the way it's shown on the plans. But the detail of that structure is, as we mentioned, would be important to have on there.
So is that another amendment to the plan we can expect?
Yeah, I went over that earlier. That's one of the details we can provide.
Okay, great.
I have a question for the review engineer. Since it's so low and it's right adjacent to the floor bay, why wouldn't it just be a paved swale into it rather than a structure?
Yeah, you can answer that. Yeah, go ahead.
It would require another waiver under the off-street parking rules and regulations. It's required that all paved areas have catch basins. That's it. It's just part of the regs. I didn't really want to get, I felt I already had a pretty long laundry list. I didn't want to ask for another waiver.
Sure.
And it's better if we have something that is that has the potential for, deep sump. It's in order to get for stormwater management, in order to be able to use that infiltration basin with such rapid infiltration rates, we have to remove 44% TSS. And that can only be done with a deep sump, with 2 BMPs. One would be the deep sump catch basin and one would be the forebay. So I need it for the drainage calcs.
Or storm scepter and street sweeping.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And you're all set? Yep. Okay. Any other questions for either the engineer or?
I actually do have another question.
Sure.
I don't remember hearing the infiltration rate for the B versus C soil addressed. Was the letter changed or was the infiltration rate changed?
It was changed. It was changed in the drainage calcs.
The rate was?
It is B soil.
It is a B soil?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was improperly labeled as a C soil?
Yeah, that was my mistake.
Okay, that's
When I looked at when you look at the back page where the colors are, there's another color that's very close to that, and I picked that in wrongly. So I had to fix all the drainage calcs, which is again why
Those numbers all
yeah,
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Markey or our peer review engineer?
I have a question. There was a discussion about the screening of the dumpster. Is that in the waiver requests here?
No, we're just
gonna
gonna,
be-
it'll be on the plan revision.
Oh, it's going to be on the revision? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so what process question, just to make sure, this is an information meeting, not a public hearing? And so the process is we may talk about granting waivers today. They're going to go back, finalize the plans based on the feedback, see if anything needs to be done to fix the stormwater, and then the plans are going to come back to us for approval at a later meeting, or what's your?
My understanding is the development plan review only has only has an informational meeting and not a public hearing. An A&R, I could be wrong on that, but I think the development plan review is an informational, and then we don't have a public hearing. I can check, we don't
Right,
have
but Are we
Chantel.
going to approve, at some point, are we going to approve a plan? Or we're not signing the plans for this? So site plan review, this is site plan review, are we going to have to sign off on these?
Yes,
Okay, so my question is, are we signing up, he's going to bring,
Yes.
but he's going to submit revised plans, which we're going to,
that we will have to sign.
that we'll have to sign, okay?
Yes.
And we'll just get feedback from our reviewing engineers to whether they've, met the criteria.
With those outstanding
So there's
waivers
not
over
gonna be
here.
another informational meeting?
No, hopefully
Okay.
not.
Okay,
Hopefully this will be
gotcha. No, it
continued
sounds
now.
like pretty small.
Yes.
Level of items left to discuss. I just want to understand the process.
Yep.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I don't think we have another public hearing. I could be wrong.
Information meeting, yeah.
Yes. Informational meeting. I don't want to keep saying public hearing. All right, so does anybody else have any questions on the waivers?
No questions on the waivers.
Question on process?
No, I have, actually, maybe a question on process, not really process. I'm just curious, so we agree that this is gonna meet the issue with the chemicals being on the site based upon the fact that there's a commitment to always load the vehicles inside the facility and so on and so forth. How does that get enforced?
The zoning officer? And we can put a directive in the findings that say, no chemicals are allowed outside, no filling of the trucks outside, just like they want a waiver for the 2 employee, number 1. For the 2 employees, they don't want to,
They don't think the lines.
so we can say, okay, if you hired 3, they got to come in front of us. Because we could put that as a directive, that only 2 employees can
Okay,
park.
so we can put a directive in there that says that parking lot stays perfectly clean.
Exactly,
Okay,
that there's
great.
no loading or unloading within the parking lot, it all has to be done
No
in-house.
particulate matter that's ever in the.
Exactly. We can say that we're going to waive the number 1 waiver, but put in a directive, if he hires more than 2 employees, or there's going to be more than 2 employees parking, then they need to come in front of us to change that number, because we're waiving it based on only 2 vehicles outside in the parking area. So that's a directive that we can absolutely put in there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like on any of these, on any development plan, we can submit waivers, findings, and then waivers to those findings. All right, and so when do you foresee submitting the final plan for us to?
Well, so what I was hoping to do tonight, I did speak with Wes on the phone today. Wes was under the presumption, as was I, that these are generally minor things that can be taken care of relatively quickly between Wes and I. If the board is willing, I was going to ask to have the hearing closed tonight, or the information meeting closed tonight, and a decision, and the decision would be based upon the acceptable plans by Whitman and Bingham and a final sign-off from Whitman and Bingham.
Yes.
And then the plans would be submitted as revised from Whitman and Bingham to you for signing.
Okay, so yeah, so perhaps in that vein, we could entertain motions on the waivers and anything based on that, and then,
They can encompass them in the,
and maybe even entertain a approval contingent or conditional upon, addressing the stormwater issue and the other remaining issues in the
the
plan.
final closeout review from the peer engineer.
Exactly, subsequent to their approval. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so I am fine with doing that.
Okay, so I'm gonna, I guess, shall we go through them one
Please,
at a
yeah,
time?
first one?
Does anyone else do we want to talk about anything else before we go into this process? Of,
Any other
motion-
questions
any
before
other
he goes into
questions,
the
topics?
waivers?
Are we going to discuss the individual waivers as they come up?
Yes.
We're going to do each
Very good.
one, and the way it'll work is he'll make a motion, one will make a second, and then we'll do discussion.
Good. Maybe we want to take any public, I don't know if
Yeah.
there's any public feedback first before we.
Oh, we can do that. Is there any public comment before we approve the waivers? No, we're good.
Okay. All right, motion to approve the first waiver on this list, approving the waiver of zoning bylaw section 6.1.2.1 for the 1259 Mass Ave development proposal. The waiver would be contingent upon there not being more than 2 vehicles parked in the space in front of the garage there.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Any discussion on this?
The conditional upon, does that include adding the directive of, as soon as there's
If-
additional employees?
If that's what you want to do, absolutely. So your recommendation is that we put a directive
Believe so.
stating that if the employee parking goes more than 2, that they would have to come in front of the planning board again to discuss that waiver.
If the number of employees goes more than 2, then they increase the parking.
Well,
Yes.
the condition as was said that there would be no more than 2 vehicles parked on the
Right.
site. So does that not cover us?
Does that imply that there are?
What if there's 4 employees, but they carpool and they only use 2 spots? So I think the condition as it's worded is good, because it says, as long as there's no more than 2 vehicles parked on the site, that prevents them from putting 3 vehicles there, but still only having 2 employees with 2 more vehicles.
I agree. Good.
I like the wording of that, and I think we should keep it
Just,
that.
no, in theory, it could mean that the other employees are parked over in the medical building parking as well. But I think it's external to what we're trying to control here, which is parking on that pad.
Correct, yeah, so I think the wording is good.
And I agree with Matthew, though, that we should put it in the directive. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay,
Very good.
so we have that. All in favor of approving it with the directive?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Aye, I don't need to unless it's a tie.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, wow, look at that. All right, so I guess before we get to the next waiver, just before we forget, motion to add the directive that, no, I guess we don't need to do that. The thing about the runoff is going to get dealt with in the stormwater. Oh, the directive about making sure there's no
waiver-
handling.
There's no waiver for that, so we have to put that in some,
In a
and that's
directive.
why I was asking, how do we enforce that? Because it's not tied to any waiver.
Probably, I think the idea of using a directive is good. So motion to request a directive, as Ken was discussing earlier, to require that loading and unloading of hazardous materials,
Correct.
or whatever they're, including
Pesticide,
pesticides and
Besides fertilizer,
fertilizer,
whatnot, would all be done inside.
inside the garage, yep.
There'd be no particulate matter in the parking lot whatsoever.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so that directive would be added. The next one?
Motion to put in a waiver regarding on zoning bylaw section 6.1.2.5. Requires final compacted pavement thickness for minor subdivision roadway shall be base course of 3 inches and 1.5 for surface, 3 inches and 1.5 for surface course. Our peer review engineer has not raised significant concerns about the waiver. I think the area of impact is reasonably small. So that's why I'm making a motion to approve the waiver.
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion, please. And this is the applicant's driveway itself?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Okay. If anyone else wants to get some motion exercise here, I'm happy to.
Great job.
All right. Motion, I'm gonna get motion sickness though in a minute. Motion to make a waiver for zoning bylaw section 6435 regarding and I guess while we're at it, 8441, regarding the driveway and the dimensions of the driveway. Yeah. So for both the next two items, 6435 and 64 and 8441A3, as requested in the letter from the applicant.
Second to both.
Discussion on either one?
Yeah, I have a comment.
No, please, go ahead.
They're two fairly different requirements. One is for a shared use and the other one is for two-way traffic. Right?
Okay.
But either way, you've got 22 feet existing, and with the two-way traffic, you're required 32-foot width opening, and I don't see a total width on the shared.
22.
That's the existing.
Existing is 22. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, the bylaw 8.441, I don't see the width required.
It's requiring
The width is 14 feet per lane with the 4 foot.
Okay, so either way, yeah, that's still 6 feet more pavement, and this is gonna be a landscaping, a large truck and trailer with business, could be any size vehicle coming in and out of it on a regular basis, and it is entering and exiting off of State Road. I guess I don't see a problem with not having it divided, but I do think it should be wider. And they've definitely got the room on one side.
Yeah, so this would be, you're proposing that they make the driveway 6 feet wider to comply with the 14 feet each way, but we would then waive the island and the keep right zones.
That would be my proposal, yeah.
I don't see that the increase in traffic is going to require that kind of buildup in infrastructure.
Well, I think you addressed that you said they're leaving in the morning, landscaping all day, coming, dropping off, and they're not in and out of there. They're loading up in the morning. Is that correct?
That's correct. So a couple points to it is 22-foot paved width. If you've been out to the site, 22 foot of pavement is really wide as it is. I don't even think I did not measure it, but I don't think that Route 2A is 30 feet wide paved. I'd have to double check that, but 30 foot of pavement is really, really wide. And I just, for that site.
I'm just envisioning all that.
Yeah.
Would serve your purpose.
Yep. So
With
for
all that
the
runoff.
2 vehicle trips per day for the landscape equipment before and end of the day, that increase in pavement is just, it's a lot.
The typical use here is going to be pickup trucks, is that?
Yes, yeah, there's one in the parking lot now, one of his trucks,
Oh, without a trailer? No trailers?
in the trailer.
And for supply delivery and things like that, are they bringing in?
That's what the
18
trailer,
wheelers?
yeah. What do you have it delivered in?
Flatbed trucks.
Okay.
It's a flatbed truck.
Yep.
It's a regular, like, 3-axle truck?
2 axle.
Just a 2-axle flatbed, that's it? Okay. Yeah, I'm with David. I don't think the additional traffic would justify requiring them to add another 6 feet to that driveway. I've been there and I've looked at the driveway. It looks pretty wide and seems quite more than adequate for two vehicles being able to pass by each other. It's not like it's going to be a major source of traffic flowing in and out.
Yeah, I think given the nature of the low volume nature of it, I could agree with you guys. And the trade-off of expanding it in addition to cost for the applicant would also be an increase in impervious surface, so.
Which also adds to stormwater.
Well, that's me, is to just have that runway now.
Right, and don't the drains border the existing driveway as well?
No, they go right to the road. Well, the driveway comes right to the road. This is on a high spot and it flows to the road, and the only thing out there is 2 drainage channels. So ideally, it flows into the road.
Well, when you pull into to the right, there's a drainage rock system.
Right,
When you
the
go in-
existing 22-foot wide paved is crowned, so it sheds to the right and the left. So that those go into those 2 infiltration areas, one
Right.
with the catch basin, one with the pipe and stone trench.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that one?
Not for me.
I see what you're saying. The existing pavement could move over. and
Exactly.
Impact that, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry?
No, that was just commenting. I just took a double look at the plan to see how there is room from the edge of the existing pavement to the trench drain. So it could be expanded without having to move the trench drain.
Okay, so all in favor of waiver
Those 2 waivers.
3.5 and 8.4.4.1?
E3 and 6.4.
Oh, 6.4, sorry, yep.
2 separate waivers?
Didn't get any agreement.
Yeah,
so probably not.
two separate, well, let's do 2 separate waivers, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so that makes
individual
sense.
waivers for.
That's fine. So for the
each of the
first
waiver
one, would-
Waivers, because we only had discussion really about one of them, so.
Okay, so for the waiver 6.435, which is where we're at now, which is strictly asking to allow the existing 22 wide driveway with no island. Do I have a second on that motion? Because now we're doing it
Second.
separately.
Second, yeah.
Okay. Do we need discussion on that one?
We've already discussed that.
Matthew? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, perfect. So that one's good.
Those 2, oh, okay, that one's good. And
Yep.
let's do the other one, I guess.
Go ahead.
All right, no, we just need a vote. I think we got them. All right, motion for waiver on 6.4 and 8.4.41 A3. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Matthew, you still want to go with the adding the 8 feet?
Well, it's basically the same discussion, right?
I'm sorry?
It's basically the same discussion we just had.
Right, the
yeah.
8 feet. This is the
No,
one where the
just
8 feet
just-
is.
Well, this is only requiring 14 times 2 is 28.
Oh, I thought, okay,
Yeah, it's 6 feet.
It would be
short.
6 additional feet of pavement.
okay. I thought you said 8, I apologize.
Sorry.
Okay, so, all in favor as the waiver with 22?
No.
Aye.
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 Okay. That passes. That's you?
Oh, sorry. Motion to approve the waiver, motion to approve the waiver regarding subdivision rules and regs, section 41046, with the directive that, conditional upon, a couple things, conditional upon the appropriate detail referenced here being added to the plan, and conditional upon a directive being added. No, I guess we don't need a directive for that one, just the additional detail. So that's the motion.
Which will be in the final peer review.
Yep.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And last one.
2 more, I think.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's okay. Motion
I thought that was a
to to approve the waiver regarding section 251 on design, construction, and maintenance of off-street parking. Interior driveways and/or service roads shall have minimum widths as follows: one-way traffic 15 feet, two-way 30. Dimensions of driveways are not shown on the plans. 251. So, so waiver approved conditional on widths being, and dimensions being added to the plans. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this third waiver that we're getting ready to approve says 30 feet width. But that's just my comment. 8 feet shy.
Yeah, it's off-street, it says off-street. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Even loading areas, yeah.
Oh, my bad, I'm sorry. Still paved driveway.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of that waiver?
Aye.
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 Okay, and last waiver.
All right, motion to waive the subdivision rules and regulations regarding minimum radii for interior driveways and service roads. The waiver is requested to allow construction of the parking and maneuvering area as shown on the plans which meet the intended use of the applicant. So the applicant explained their reason for requesting it, so the motion is to grant the request.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so you're all set with the waivers. So now we'll just wait for your final peer review lettering with Wes or Anthony, whoever's that going to be. And once we have the plan with our final checklist off by the peer review, we can sign that and be on our way.
Do we want to make...
Ow.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Okay. Do we want to do a motion to approve it conditional on successful review with the peer review engineer and meeting all the requirements?
We can do that if the board is comfortable doing that.
I'm fine with it.
I'm okay with it.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Nathan is looking to approve the plan contingent
Conditional.
upon
Sure.
Final approval.
final review of the criteria that's outstanding between the two engineers. So Nathan has made that motion.
Final review and approval.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
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 There you go.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Have a good night.
There you go. Okay, thank you for coming. I'm going to close the informational meeting. Before I do that, is there any public comment? Okay, I'm going to close the informational hearing, and then we will just have that final development plan submitted and the peer review signing off on all the things that were out.
Okay.
Okay?
Great. I appreciate it. Have a
Nice
good
meeting.
night.
Thank you, Mr. Markey. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so that is done. Thank you, guys. You did a great job. Next on the item on our agenda.
So just a procedural question. Are we not on the air, I guess, tonight?
No, we are.
Oh, we are? Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
just the camera's not on.
Okay.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we have an appointment at 6:50. Where are we for time? Right on schedule.
Schedule it 30 minutes
Oh,
late.
boy.
For Emerald Place, regarding the request for bond release, DPW Director and David Ross Associates input scan to the board. So does everybody have the input? She has copies here. Does anybody need a copy?
Hold on a sec.
I'll take a copy.
If you got copies, sure.
I've got two.
That's fine, just give them.
Did you find it in the distribution?
Oh, okay, come on up.
Find it in the distribution.
Yeah, it was this letter here.
Hi, Mr. Sullivan, how are you?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, board members. Again, for the record, my name is Jack Sullivan. I'm a principal with Emerald Place Development. We're developing Emerald Place at Lake Whalum. And again, we're here tonight to discuss releasing the remainder of the bond. So since we last met, you did release $65,000 from the $202,000, and we have paved, finished coat of pavement and striping all of lakefront and around the roundabout and all the little odds and ends that Mr. Rodikins wanted. And we applied a new coat of binder on Great Pond Road.
Okay.
So we've done that in the past couple of weeks. And, excuse me, again, we were unable to set up a meeting with the review engineer from Ross Associates. So I'm just following up on our last discussion. And with me tonight is Anthony Cleaves, who he's working for me. He's our engineer tonight. So
Could you bring a different hat or something for this?
So hopefully he can answer any questions you have.
Okay, does
Thank you.
anybody have any questions?
Well, my understanding is Jack was only concerned about the pavement, which was done. However, the bond was held back for things other than just the pavement, like the trees and survey monuments and drain cleaning and street sweeping and roadway as-built and various and sundry other items. So the pavement's been addressed, but what about the other stuff that we were holding the money back on? And I'm just asking the question because I wasn't involved in these holdbacks. If I look at the summary from the last meeting, the pavement was only part of that.
Right, and what I believe the gentleman from Emerald Place is reporting is that they've completed the pavement of the road by the lake. I don't know that you're saying you've completed, I think the bonding also dealt with internal roadways.
Yes, it did.
And as I understand, Jesse had some issues with the state of those when he put together that thing there. Yeah.
No, that's correct. He did, but he also, in his correspondence, stated, and again, I understand it's up to the board, it's a private development. We will never be deeding this over to the town. The only thing we're going to deed to the town will be Lakefront Road. But as far as the inner development, we hold that. And that's why some of the items I'm not, I'm going to be a little ignorant here, I'm not sure why they were even bonded. Like as-built plans, monuments, it's not street trees, it's not a subdivision. So, and that's where Anthony comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a traditional subdivision. It's not a traditional private development, either in Lunenburg terms, I would say. I'd say it's probably more akin to a subdivision than it is to a typical private development in the town of Lunenburg. And so that's probably where, the bonding came from. And I think, with Emerald Place, there was definitely a desire to see and which I think has largely been delivered on, to ensure a certain level of final quality, and I think there's certainly been a lot of very good things done there. I think I would like to see the items that have addressed. I think we'll all be happy to release the bond when the items covered by the bond that were in the directives for the project, when it's all completed.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. This is more of an informational thing.
Sure.
Because, a little history here. We bought it from a developer who had already had it approved, and then we changed the buildings.
Yep.
That's what we changed. So if we go on that note, where the review engineer had recommended, I'm going to use round figures here, releasing all but the $72,000, and then he carried a little over $14,000 for the binder on Great Pond Road, which has been done now.
Yep.
That would leave a total to be released of $85,700. And then we would still have $52,000 remaining in the bond. Based on his itemized breakdown.
So So release all but the 58K, give or take, is what you're
It's,
requesting.
I want to say it's 52,000, but
So where's the 20 coming off of?
So what he's saying is that.
Yeah, because I don't have Jesse's,
If you look at the numbers I did last time, we were more conservative on what we released back.
yes, we only did Jack's.
So the engineering recommendation was to retain back 71,5, right?
Yeah.
And based upon Jack's request, which he was concerned about the pavement portion of that 71,000 was 14,000. That pavement portion is done now. Everyone,
Well, no,
this is the external road portion of
Oh,
the
the
pavement.
external, so just the external was
It's
14.
external road, I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, right, this is the bit binder. It had a total cost of 94,500, there was 14,175 left to be done. That was my understanding.
How do you know that's all external and not internal roadways?
I don't, that's, I thought what we said at the last meeting.
Anthony, do you have a handout that'll help in this process?
So when I was rereading that, my impression was it was,
From what I understand in the previous history, the directives for the approval listed a condition to have a road bond for the exterior road work under ownership of the town. And I think, as Mr. Lockwood was talking about, the town hadn't really had a development like this before. What you did have was subdivisions, so you knew how to handle subdivisions. And you have a typical breakdown of a subdivision, so it became a very easy outline to come up with some values, to hold back some money. I thought the original intent was really to make sure that all of the exterior site work was completed, basically Lakefront Avenue. Because there really wasn't a separate bond for Lakefront Avenue, although that was the major intent as listed in the directives. So I think that coming up with this outline was a way for the town to hold back some money to make sure Lakefront was done. As I understood Jesse's review, that the binder in his item 19, I think the reason why I was holding back 15% was specifically for Great Pond Road, and that had been deteriorated due to construction, and that would need to be replaced within the development if the board thought as though you wanted to hold back money for a private development, where you wouldn't ordinarily, if it was a subdivision, you wouldn't want to take over a road until that was complete. The town would execute that bond and go in and redo the road. I don't think that's the town's intent, is not going to go in and put in sidewalks and berm on private property. I think the big intent was to have Lakefront Avenue done, which it has been done. But
Well, 'cause I
I believe that
think-
15% was specific for Great Pond Road in this exercise. So I believe that 14,000 was specific to Great Pond Road, which if the board is looking to still hold back money and still consider this a subdivision, I think that 15% can go away as all the binder is done. It's 100% complete. Lakefront Avenue is done, and Great Pond Road had been redone as well. So all the binder is complete for the project, so should be 0% held back for the binder. So that 14,000 should be able to come back.
Okay. What about the berm and the sidewalk and the various other
I
items?
mean, again, it gets back to that discussion, if the board wants to consider this as a subdivision, and you want to hold back that money, sure, that some of those items are not yet complete, and some have gotten beaten up, but
yeah.
it's a condo development also. That's what the condo association is for, too.
And also, we have replaced the berm wherever it gets damaged for the past 3 years. So every spring, we have a contractor come in and replace the berm because we own it, so.
That's, I mean, it's a different type of project. I think this served its purpose in the beginning for the town to make sure that it was holding back money, because there were some significant off-site improvements as part of the project. But those have been complete. So that's kind of what we're trying to bring the discussion to.
Okay. So if you can, for me, go down that list and tell me what's not complete, that has a financial number next to it.
Sure. So the top coat would still need to be complete in certain sections. That's the 40% number that Ross had listed. Some of the berm would still need to be repaired. That's that 10%. Sidewalk would still need to be complete in some areas. So
Now,
those-
is this
those are fine.
inside?
This is all inside.
All
There's
inside?
nothing
The
exterior.
lakefront is all front, the rotary,
Yeah,
all
that's
that is all done?
That's all
The
done.
berm, everything is done there?
Yep,
Okay.
And the DPW director was satisfied with that and agreed with that. So everything we're talking about was all on private property.
All on private property under the condo association's responsibility?
Correct.
Okay.
Street trees, that's a difficult item. It's not a subdivision. We didn't have street trees as you would typically have with a subdivision. Each unit has its own landscaping around, if you've been through there, but around, some of the entryways in the front of the building, so we don't have typical street trees like you would, but as the buildings get built, they get landscaped along with that. So that item isn't really applicable as in the true sense of a subdivision, because we don't really have street trees. And then you get into the group 5, survey monuments. Where survey monuments would come into play for a subdivision is you would bound every change in direction of the roadway, so the town would have a delineated roadway on the ground before they take it over. When it's all private property, it's one parcel of land, we're not gonna have survey monuments on the roads. It doesn't serve a purpose.
And the town doesn't plow that, it's all within
Right,
the, it's all private.
It's all
and-
private,
right,
yeah, absolutely.
okay.
So we wouldn't have survey monuments, so that item really doesn't even need to be there. Inspect and clean drains, same thing, it'd be a typical item. Before the town wants to take over a road, I want to make sure I'm taking over a clean system. I don't want to, day one it gets turned over, to have to send my guys in and clean it. It's their association is responsible for ongoing cleaning throughout the life of the project. So that's another item that doesn't really apply for the bond. Sweep the street, same thing. The town doesn't want to take a dirty road over. But same thing, the condo association is responsible for upkeep of their development. And then roadway as-built. Again, it's not a roadway that's being turned over to the town, it's just all an internal private thing. So group 5 really isn't applicable at all to this type of development.
So these protections were put in place in the event that we had to take over the property as the town, is that what it was?
No, I think what happened, and Anthony can correct me if I'm wrong, when Emerald Place started, the lakefront road went into controversy over who owned that road.
Yes,
If it was
that's
Emerald
correct.
Place or if it was the town of Lunenburg. And we hired Copeland and Page to start to investigate, and it was gonna be, they investigated, and they had to do deeper investigation, which was gonna cost a lot of money. So Emerald Place with the town said, okay, what we'll do is we'll put a bond, make sure that the Lakeview Road in front of the lakefront. And I think really that was what this bond was for that road, is that the town didn't want them to come in, build their development, go away, and now we've got the lakefront that we have to repave, the rotary, redo the rotary, do all, that was all part of that bond, is that we bonded them for that road, because it's the same on a development that builds their road once it comes back to the town. So that's where I think, because even Jesse said usually bonds don't happen on subdivisions, but I think it was because it impacted that road, and Selectman Bertram spoke to that there's still that controversy over who owns the road. Well, we know now, it's gonna get to the town either way.
We don't want it.
They don't want it, so the town thinks they own it, so once it was paved and signed off, they're gonna give it back to the town anyway.
All right.
So,
And again, that's the first two, you probably have it in front of you, the first two directives of that approval. First directive was that the applicant shall specify before construction a plan for a performance guarantee. Such guarantee shall be acceptable to the Lunenburg Planning Board by vote. And number 2 was the applicant shall present a road bond for exterior road work under ownership of the town. I think the intent was the board the bond for the exterior work was the performance guarantee. And because a tool like this already existed, because you guys are familiar with subdivisions, just became a very easy outline to go by, and that's how the project took off.
right. So,
I have a question. So is the Emerald Place management intending to complete the items that are bonded on there in a reasonable time period?
Except for the items that don't get done, such as monuments, as-built. We clean the drains ourselves. We have our own management company that takes care of this every year.
Yeah, that's
So-
ongoing. There'll never be an end to that, because the town's never taking that over.
Yeah.
A lot of these things are final items before you go to a town meeting, DPW signs off, okay, did you clean the catch basins? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Did you sweep the street? Yep. That's never gonna happen. This is never being turned over to the town.
Yeah, and as far as street trees, we have more than would be required under a subdivision, because as Anthony said, once every unit goes in.
You do that whole
Yeah, I mean,
landscape around that
there's
unit.
extensive
A lot.
landscaping all over the site, but it's not a typical, every 40 feet you put a
Yeah.
tree. You know, there are pines for buffer, there are grouped planting areas, so it was a different landscape setup to it. And that's, as each building goes in, more landscaping goes in with it.
So what is your request financially? Do you want to hold, or do you want it all back?
I want to be reasonable.
Yeah,
to
no,
be honest
tell me-
about it, you know, so.
Tell me what you...
I mean, right now, you release 65,000, you're holding 130,
130?
What is it? What do they
I
hold?
think we're holding 135.
137,702. I'd like to get 100,000 back. Nice round figure.
So you'd be still holding 37,000
Yeah.
for things to be completed on the private development.
That we would never have on
You
any
would
other...
never really go in
Right.
and enforce a bond to go, the town's not gonna go in and start putting berm in a private development. But you still have $37,000 that you're holding over the developers. Which, I mean, if you, again,
It's pretty close to Jesse's
you
recommendation.
take off the 14,000 for the pavement, that gets you down to like 57. You take off the street trees and all of Group 5, you know, quickly, you're down to like $40,000.
15,000, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, you know, so I'd be, you know, I'd be fine with releasing up to between where we are now and Jesse's amount that he put there. It'd be useful to have Jesse present to, you know, talk about the rest. I mean, he did some calculations on street trees. I read his stuff a month ago. It's not fresh in my head right now.
Basically, it said that would cover 10 street
10
trees.
10 trees.
But again, we're not putting in street trees. We're putting in landscaping around the building. And Jesse also said, it's, you know, one of his comments is up to the board in regards to the interior work and whether a bond still needs to be in place at all. So I think what Jesse's gonna comment on is the values within this outline of a subdivision. So then it becomes back on the board as, what do you feel is reasonable to hold back on a private development that the town will never enforce to take over?
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, this agreement was, this was discussed like when the development was put in. I mean, I think it's worth noting that Emerald Place was it's an overlay district. It's sort of a special development in Lunenburg. Maybe it got bonded in the way its subdivision did, and the fit may not have been perfect. That said, there's a lot of good things for the developer about the Emerald, overlay district in terms of, density. I think it has a density that you won't find anywhere else in Lunenburg. There were other concessions on both sides in terms of the way the project rolled out. So I guess, unfortunately, these things, in a small town, small board, things are never documented as perfectly as one wants. I'd be hesitant to release too much of the bond until the things we can all agree need to get done for the quality of the project, the berm, any finishing on the interior roadways are done. Because, ultimately, that's a big part of the town, an important part of the town. And, we want, the town's intent has always been, as your intent has been, to see that become attractive in the economic environment so that you can sell it at a good price. And I think, and it's in the town's interest to see a substantial, if not all of that, become owner occupied. So I'm reluctant at this point. I mean, I'm sure everybody, there's different parts of the final agreement we'd all want to go back and tweak for this or that or renegotiate. But, and I agree with your points that, a lot of the things have been completed and the bonds related to those things should be released. But I guess I'm definitely not ready to release the whole thing, and I would like the counsel of our peer review engineer, but before releasing too much more than what's there. If it sounds like good progress has been made on the road by Lake Whalum. So Jesse was saying release 72 before that was done. Maybe we can take that down to, what's that?
I speak for Jesse, but I believe he was looking at it as, if the board was considering this a subdivision, here is his breakdown. In his email, another email, it is unusual to have a bond in place for a private development, so I'll leave it up to the board to decide the intent of the bond. So, I don't want to speak for Jesse, but some of the email correspondence we have, it's not his decision on what the intent of that previous, because he wasn't even involved at that time
Yeah.
either. It was David Ross had done the review for that. I think what you'll have is, he'll give you a breakdown of the items remaining on the project, and then it becomes a board's determination as how much do you want to hold back? Are you viewing it as a subdivision? Or, what have you done in the past for holding bonds on private developments? How much money do you hold back on other private developments?
This is unprecedented, this
It is.
development
It
in
is.
Lunenburg. So this, I think the board was trying to, I don't know, I came in at the tail end of that project. It might have been post-approval I came in even. But,
But again, we're not looking, as Jack mentioned, looking to be cooperative.
Sure,
We're not
sure.
looking to have everything come back.
And that's what they said. They didn't say the whole 13702, they said 100. We would still have 3702 in the bond. So we'd have $37,000 on hold. They are asking for 100 back, so we would still have that. So, and if you're not comfortable with the 100, then what would it be that you'd be comfortable with?
Well, I'm going to put words in your mouth. Based upon everything that you just said, you would be comfortable returning $93,000 as opposed to the 100.
100. So we're
Because that would hold
7,000.
back $44,000, which covers everything added up that,
Jesse.
that we would ultimately do, that Jesse said we were holding back funds for, which includes the berms and the sidewalks and finished pavement and things like that. So that, according to those numbers, would add up to about 44K. I'm not going to debate the intent. My opinion is the intent was to make sure that Lakeview Drive was fixed, and it's fixed, so we could release the bond, because that was the intent of the bond. But I wasn't here when you established the intent. And clearly, there's line items in here that go long beyond that lakefront. So, given that, the items that are left to be done interior on private property adds up to about 44,000. So if we wanted to release all but 44,000, that would meet your need, and it would come close to what you're looking for. It would be 93K roughly back to you as a
Round it off.
And he rounded off,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, if you wanted to, I think you did the same thing.
I just did a rough estimate, so.
If you wanted to stay specific to this outline, when you take off the 15% for the binder, you take out the street trees, and you take out all of Group 5, I come up with a remaining bond being held of $43,678.
Right, and I rounded that up to 40.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So if you wanted to go to the penny, so it's consistent with this outline, if that makes you feel comfortable at that point, that might be fine.
That's up to you guys.
Does that satisfy your concern? That's why I was trying to put words in your mouth.
no, I think you did a good job. Yeah, I don't want to sweat the small stuff too much. I think, I don't know, so that's assuming that some of that roadway stuff there was all exterior roadway. That's, 44, I think that's meaningful, and, it's incentive to complete the remainder of the work.
More than incentive, yeah.
Yeah, it is real money, yeah. So, I would probably say 50, but I'm okay with 44. And as far as things like the street trees go, when I read Jesse's thing, I thought there were street trees on the plans. It sounds like there wasn't a landscaping plan that included street
It
trees.
says in a subdivision, you have to have street trees. So that's why they put money away for the street trees.
Okay.
But they do, and they planted more than if it was a subdivision, what the bylaw calls for tree plantings, they've already planted more than that.
Yeah. So I think this has been a good conversation. I guess, I'm flexible. If it were up to me, I would say, let's leave it at 50. That's 22 more than I had originally personally been comfortable releasing without the direct feedback from our peer review engineer. And that 50, the issue that would be released, on completion of the berms and the top coat and all that, and that stuff. But that, you guys have opinions too, so that's kind of where I'm at.
I need a motion for a number. I think the 44 is fair.
I move that we refund the bond, all but holding back $44,000.
Do I have a
Second.
Discussion.
ready to give it all back because it's a bond, not a private developer.
So am I.
So am I feel the same way, but,
But do we want to vote on that?
well, that would be making an amendment to Nathan's, if he would so. And I haven't heard from Matthew, I don't know where Matthew stands.
I'm fine
There's
with
a motion on the floor, it's been seconded.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm fine with leaving 44,000 in place too, which is,
Okay.
I want to state that I don't see the reason behind having the bond, but if you want to do the 44, I'm fine.
And Matthew, I'm sorry, I didn't get your thoughts.
I said that there was a motion on the floor that's been seconded.
Yeah, we're discussing.
Oh, okay.
So I understand that. I think, there's a lot of concern, I think, in many ways, people are happy with the outcome. The developer's done a good job. There's been a lot of concern, both in the inception of the early inception of the project, during the project, after the project, in terms of the quality of the final product and the impact of the final product on the town, because it is, I think, unprecedented in scope of development. And so, and you could even, the concern for this level of impact, we've all had conversations after about how the original intent was 100% owner occupancy because the economic conditions, they haven't been able to achieve that. I think it's pretty small percent owner occupancy now. That's still kind of a lingering concern.
Well, they're all
So
rented.
although it's a little non-standard,
They're all leased.
it's 0% owner occupancy right now. So I know the owners want to fix that. I know the town wants to fix that. This bond isn't going to fix it by itself, but I think it's a good token of good faith on both boards' part, both to reduce the bond and to maintain a significant, substantial part, just to help ensure that the project, which is a very big project and still isn't completed for good reasons, does reach its promise of a completed quality development. So that's why, although it isn't standard, I can tell you that the spirit of, the board, the board looking for certain things initially and working together with the developer to help see those things happen is characteristic of many of the conversations we've had. So although the exact vehicle may be a little non-standard, I think the intent has been pretty consistent.
I think we understand the concern, and that's why we're willing to still hold back the 44K.
And I just want to
I
say,
think without the history, we would just say, don't hold back any, but you have the history because you were there from the beginning, so.
well, and I would just like to comment, because I think we have two things going on in that statement that Nathan just made. And I was actually outside this evening talking to a resident about that, because he saw it on the agenda. We made a decision a while back to go from condominium, not selling, because we still wanted to sell them, but also to do a lease to own, because we had the units completed and they weren't selling because of the economic time. So as a board, we had to weigh the factors. Do we want these beautiful buildings that were just created, that are brand new, sitting vacant, that can be vandalized and all these things happening to them? Or do we want people living in them, spending money in Lunenburg, shopping at the Hannaford, the Walmart, and putting money into our community? So we went with, okay, go to lease to own, so at least there's people in the building and they're not these vacant buildings. The bond and the berm holding has nothing to do with the lease to own versus selling of condos. And I said, in hindsight, what I think we should have thought of as a planning board is, what's that end result though? Because how long do we go from lease to own and never having a sold condominium? Because we really didn't come up with an exit strategy of, okay, how long do we follow the lease to own program? So that's kind of two separate issues, and I don't think holding back the money has anything to do with getting us out of the lease to own versus selling condominiums. So, but that's why we went from, just so people understand that it was, the decision in front of us at that time was to have, because the 3 buildings were up, the 3 buildings were vacant, so. And so I think the motion on the table is to hold $44,000 and give the rest back. That was the motion, it was
Motion was
seconded.
seconded.
Any other discussion on holding $44,000?
Please no.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now, Jack, when we gave back the first, did I have to run over there and sign something?
Yes,
Okay, so I'll have to do that, so I'll just.
Marjorie, and
All
then I
right,
pick it up and I go to the bank.
okay, because if we can do that tomorrow, I'll be here at 5:30 and the town hall's open till 6:30, so I can run over and sign that before I come here tomorrow when I get out of work.
So you'll let Marjorie know?
I will let Marjorie know,
Okay.
to have that ready for me to sign, and then you could pick it up Wednesday morning,
Perfect.
if Marjorie can do that
Yep.
in that time frame. And like I said, before I come here, I'll zip over there.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
Any other questions for Anthony or Mr. Sullivan? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
seeing
Much for
you.
your time,
Good to see
for
you.
discussion. Thank you.
Congratulations. 30 years ago yesterday, it gets better every day.
Yes, do you all know, I don't know if you, Matthew, Damon got engaged. That was
Excellent.
public comment, so.
Excellent,
that's what Jack was,
congratulations.
talking about. Okay. Thank you, have a great night. Moving right along, we have the MRPC, the introduction of the housing production plan. Hello.
Hello, my name's Sam Lawton. I'm a principal planner with MRPC, and I'm working on the housing production plan, and I'd like to just go through some of the basic information and maybe initiate some discussion about some of the ideas that you might have
Perfect.
that need to be incorporated into this.
Do you have
Originally-
handouts for us, Sam?
I do. Originally, I think I was going to use a projector. I thought this might be set up and that I would just be able to plug in, and I didn't want to disturb anything,
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
I
this
don't
is,
think
this
we
is
can get
exactly
that
what I
up
was
there.
going to be presenting anyway. I have extra copies. I don't know if people would want.
Thank you, Nathan.
So, this project, if you're familiar with the Direct Local Technical Assistance Program that Lunenburg has participated in the past, in order to fund these projects, this is through the Chapter 205 of the Massachusetts General Laws, which enables regional planning agencies such as MRPC to provide technical assistance to communities for any subject within our regional planning expertise. Next slide, the things I want to cover tonight are the requirements for the plan, things that changed by new legislation in 2008. You had had a previous housing production plan, which has expired, and it was based on previous legislation. There were some revisions in 2008. Now, I'll talk a little bit about Lunenburg's demographics, the 2006 affordable housing strategy, some of the housing production opportunities, and the next steps that we hope to go through. Next slide. As I mentioned, the town had previously prepared a community affordable housing strategy in 2006, which covers a lot of the types of strategies that we would be looking at for including in this housing production plan. The town requested that we update the plan, and at the same time, our understanding is that the information and a lot of the documentation that's going to go into this plan can then transition into your housing chapter for the master plan update. That's going to be the next phase of this process.
Right,
But
that was the goal.
We want to get the housing production plan finalized and approved first, because that has certain advantages for you. You get to take a proactive approach for the development of affordable housing, which enables you to meet your affordable housing and community planning goals, and also enables you to basically take control of your permitting process in the, when 40B projects are proposed to the town. As you know, given, without a housing production plan and the fact that you have not achieved the state target of 10% of your housing stock being classified as affordable, if a 40B development is proposed and the developer wants to go through the comprehensive permitting process, your zoning board of appeals and you as a planning board have very little control over that. By having a housing plan, a housing production plan in place, showing that you're making progress toward increasing your share of affordable housing within the community, you will take control of the process and will have control over whatever developments are proposed. Next slide talks a little bit about the program changes from 2008. The target that you have to achieve on an annual basis in terms of production of affordable housing has been reduced. Lunenburg's targets would now be 20 units for a one-year program or 40 units for 2 years. Additional information is required in the housing plan. It needs to be approved by the planning board and the board of selectmen, and the kinds of strategies that would be included are things like zoning changes, identification of potential sites for new development, and the kinds of construction that you would like to see. This is still obviously a challenge given the state of the housing market. It's improving a lot at this point, but it's still going to take some effort, and it's also going to take cooperation of developers that might be interested in developing new housing in Lunenburg. So the required elements for a housing production plan now, we have to do a comprehensive housing needs assessment. I've completed that. I've talked to Marjorie and Chantel about that, and I think we're pretty well done with that part of the process. Then we need to establish housing goals and a proposed housing mix, develop the implementation strategies, and also use restrictions, which would be those restrictions that need to be in place to assure that once affordable housing is constructed and sold or rented, that it remains affordable housing into the future. So the housing needs assessment that I've conducted to this point, I've looked at the demographics of the community and housing data, development constraints, particularly those that are in your zoning bylaws. We've looked at any obstacles there might be that would prevent development of affordable housing, and we've also done a very sort of preliminary infrastructure analysis. As far as developing goals for affordable housing, my feeling was we should start with the 2006 plan. That was something that the community approved at the time, and my sense is that that provides a good sort of starting point for us to identify goals and also develop strategies. The goals basically are determined by the state, the most fundamental goal, which is going back to 40 affordable housing units per year, or 20 per year or 40 over 2 years. And that essentially establishes your production schedule. As far as strategies, we're looking at areas that could be suitable for additional affordable housing, any sites that have already been identified by the community for 40B projects, availability of municipal land, and the preferred development characteristics that the community would like to see. As I'm going through this, I realize this is kind of dry. If you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to interrupt me. The use restrictions, as I mentioned, basically assure that whatever is developed as affordable housing would remain affordable. And I think an important point to keep in mind is that first bullet there, all affordable units must serve households with incomes no greater than 80% of the area median income. That's not Lunenburg's median income. It's the area, meaning that has been established by HUD. And that's basically the Fitchburg, Leominster, metropolitan fair market rent area. So it takes into account the median income of a variety of communities, many of which have median incomes lower than Lunenburg's. So what that does is essentially lowers the price ceiling that is necessary in order to qualify, that it would be below what the price ceiling would be if you were just basing the cost on Lunenburg's income. What that does is limit the number of housing units that may currently be available, that are currently listed on the MLS, to a much cheaper or more, let's say, lower cost than what might be eligible for just Lunenburg's income.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
sorry, go for it.
Do you, just off the top of your head, Sam, know 2013 or 2014 what the current median is?
I do.
Is it in the slides?
It's in my data here, I can tell you. Lunenburg's median household income, this is based on the 2010 census.
2010 is the, okay.
$78,452. But if I go to the,
And that's household.
that's a household, right. However, for the Fitchburg, Leominster fair market rent area, the median family income, based on its family of four, which is considered the standard, is $67,900. So it's somewhat less, not dramatically less, but it is less, and that, as a result, means that the ceiling for the 80% income cutoff is lower than what it would be just for, if it was just the community of Lunenburg that was the basis for the calculation.
It's more than 10%.
Other use restrictions, limitations must remain in place for the life of the unit, and there must be a regulatory agreement between the developer and whatever subsidizing agency is involved in supporting the subsidized housing.
What's the target percentage of subsidized housing?
10%. Now, basically, that's all part of the state's strategy of trying to build or have 10,000 affordable housing units constructed by 2020. But the target for every community individually is 10% of their overall housing stock. Some of the slides that give you some of the just basic demographics for Lunenburg. I know you're familiar with the fact that the community is growing rather rapidly. Between 2000 and 2010, you added about 7.3% population. That's about double the state and the MRPC region. In general, if we look at all the 22 communities in the MRPC region, Lunenburg was responsible for about 8% of the total regional growth. So you represent a fairly large share of the total growth within the area. The next slide talks about the growth in housing units. As of 2000, there were 3,668 units within the community, and by 2010, there were 4,133, so approximately 5%, or I'm sorry, 500 new units were added. Your total change was 12.7%, and that's interesting in comparison to your population growth. Your rate of housing growth at 12.7% exceeds your population growth, which was 7.3%. So there is a fairly rapid growth in the number of housing units within the community. This slide also shows vacancy, and vacant units include units that at the time that the census was taken may be for sale or for rent so that they were vacant. They could also include seasonal units, but more importantly, it also can include foreclosed or abandoned properties.
Can I ask, I'm on the MRPC, as you know, Sam, and what is the funding that they're now giving, like Ashby, was it Athol? I apologize, Athol, for the foreclosed houses?
They're taking advantage of the Community Development Block Grant Program, and that's actually something that we would talk to you about, when we get into the strategies.
Okay.
But there has been money made available. You have to go through an application process, but they've been fairly successful in getting money and using that to rehab what might be derelict property.
Right, and be able to turn it over. And be able to turn it over and sell it.
And exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And the state helps financially on that.
The
'Cause
state,
that's
the state
something-
helps. There are actually a number of programs, but the one that most people turn to is the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Yeah, because if we could look at that at our foreclosed to see if that's something we could maybe be eligible for.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. The next slide shows building permit trends. And it's kind of interesting because most communities you sort of see a sort of a steady curve. Things declined substantially after the burst of the housing bubble in 2006. Things have stayed relatively stable here, with the exception of the 285 units in 2010, which are primarily Emerald Place. So I thought it was somewhat coincidental that we're talking about Emerald Place tonight. It looks like you're pretty much on track in this year, 2014, to at least meet your building permit numbers from 2013. And from all we can tell, the housing market is recovering substantially. The next slide gives some evidence of that, which shows the housing prices and number of sales over the past 10 years. And you can see that things did decline starting around 2006. But by 2013, you're back pretty close to what you were before the mortgage crisis, and your housing prices are also recovering. So I think the other thing, the average price of, I went over the MLS listings to see where things stand. The average price of a single-family home that's currently listed is now nearly $336,000. So prices are definitely going up. There were 75 single-family homes, 1 multifamily home, and 10 condominiums listed as active for sale on MLS as of August 4th.
These numbers are based on sales, though, not listings.
Excuse me?
So these numbers are based on sales, though, not listings.
These are based on sales, yeah.
So the listing price and the sale price are often.
Exactly. Right, yeah, there would be a discrepancy, but I think that gives you some idea of
Yeah, I understand.
the target.
Trend is going up.
Exactly.
I'm trying to say.
So, Lunenburg currently has a number of 40B classified subsidized housing units, and this next slide shows you where those are located. The Pearlbrook Apartments, Department of Developmental Services has individual homes throughout the community, and then Tri-Town Landing, which is your largest single subsidized housing project. And if you add those up, you get 131 units. Tri-Town Landing has applied, has built another building, as you probably know, which would add another 33 units to your total, and it's just going through DHCD right now for approval. So that brings your number up to 164 total units, and based on the inventory from 2010, which is the baseline that DHCD uses to determine what your SHI share should be, you would be up to about 4% of the total housing stock, which is considered subsidized. One thing also I should let you know, the clock resets every 10 years, every time there's a decennial census. So we're calculating everything based on your 2010 census, but come 2020, everything gets recalculated. And you've been adding to your total housing stock over that period of time, and you've presumably also been adding to your SHI inventory. So the state does a recalculation, but right now we're basing everything on 2010.
So everything we do currently for our master plan with the housing element, it's all, these numbers are going to be based on 2010?
Correct. But, well, we can maybe talk about that, because we are going to want to do some forecasting.
Right.
And what is necessary for your housing production plan may be a little bit different than what you're looking toward in your master plan, because your master plan, I'm assuming you're going to have a 15, 20-year horizon on that. So we're going to want to do some forecasting.
Right. But for numbers that we look at, because everybody says, well, why they pull in 2010?
Right.
It's because it's every 10 years.
As far as the
Census.
housing production plan is concerned, and the state's certification of your having met the requirements in order to comply with 40B, it's based on 2010.
Okay, and something we learned, or I learned, was that, for example, Emerald, Tri-Town Landing is now got notification and they want to build a fourth one.
Right.
That's going to come underway. I did not realize as soon as that was built and the apartments were done and they received their occupancy permits, we could go to the DHC and get a 2-year grandfather because it exceeded the 20.
That's possible, yes.
Okay. See, we weren't aware of that and never applied for that.
Right.
So we want to make sure that as we hit
You
those
should-
20s within a year,
Right.
we're applying for that grandfather of 2 years.
Right. And I should add too, as far as the production plan, housing production plan itself, because this is basically a 5-year plan. We're looking 5 years into the future. We know that, the projects that might be identified for year 3, 4, and 5 haven't necessarily gotten off the ground yet. That's okay, as long as we have reasonable confidence that those projects are going to be undertaken. The state will accept that, and they can show up in your plan, because it's understood that you have no guarantee, and projects, 5 years from now are not necessarily under construction at this point. So,
I'm sorry, I have
Do you have a question?
I have
Yes.
a question.
Go ahead, Matt.
There's slide 14 on page 7. It's saying 40B subsidized. I was under the impression that was just low income. Was a subsidy?
they have to meet certain conditions. Low income meaning what? That they're low priced?
Chapter 40B is about low income housing, and I don't remember reading subsidized anywhere in that.
Subsidy has a lot of meaning under
Okay.
40B. There may be actual money conveyed to a developer through the state, through one of the state agencies.
Okay.
There may be assistance provided. It could be just simply technical assistance. Doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of dollars.
Right.
So there are a lot of ways of classifying subsidized housing, which it's unfortunate that they use that term because you have a certain connotation or understanding of what that means, but they have a rather broad definition of subsidized. To simply say it's low-income housing, it needs to be certified that it's going to qualify as subsidized housing under the state's definition, and there has to be the restrictions as far as the future price or future cost of either maintaining the sale price of the housing or the rental cost. So there are various conditions that apply. Just to call it low-income housing may not be sufficient to meet the state's standards.
Very good, thank you.
If I understand correctly, that covenant around controlling the maximum rental or sales price, that's really the kind of the cornerstone of qualifying a unit for inclusion in your SHI?
Right. The idea is ultimately that people shouldn't be spending more than about 30% of their annual income on housing. And the state's calculation is that if you price the housing so that people can afford it, who have the 80%, their income is no more than 80% of the region's annual median income, that they would qualify and they would not be spending more than 30% of their annual income.
Gotcha. And so just to be clear, I mean, although, I don't know if you want to look at that as that covenant as a subsidy or not, but as he said earlier, you could produce affordable housing that qualifies towards the subsidized housing inventory, which is what that SHI acronym is about, without any dollars technically being spent to whatever, facilitate the construction or incent the construction or whatnot. Although, like under 40B, there's programs that do offer those types of things, but it isn't always part of the equation.
And I think realistically, most developers, if they're going to be developing low-income housing, they would probably seek some kind of assistance in order to help make their project financially feasible.
Thank you.
I don't know if I need to go through all of the goals and objectives and strategies of your 2006 plan. As I said earlier, this is sort of a starting point for discussion. You had 5 housing goals, and coincidentally, one of them was to develop 22 affordable housing units each year over the next 5 years. So you're already pretty close to what would be required under the state regulations for 40B. There are a number of other strategies that are included in the plan.
Sam, can we go back, I'm sorry, to
Yeah,
slide 15?
certainly.
Number 4, to encourage development,
Where are you on?
slide 15.
Slide 15?
Page 8, slide
Yeah.
15, number 4.
Yes,
I'm looking at, to encourage development of 2 drive-in theaters.
Right.
Which we've got Tri-Town done, and now we still have Whalum. And then to reuse of the school site buildings for 40R regulation. Now, we have a primary school over here that we were hoping to get some elderly housing in, and we were working with the federal government that didn't go through. How would we, or could we, go into making that a 40R?
I don't think it meets the square footage.
For 40R, I saw the 40R in the empty building, and
Right.
for a village district, you need housing. So if we can't get an elderly housing in there, or what could we do? But it doesn't meet, what, Damon, I'm sorry?
I thought there's a square footage requirement on 40Rs.
I don't know what the,
I think it's based, yeah, it may be based on the total property that would be affected, the lot size. I am not completely familiar with the 40R requirements,
Okay.
but that I know that there are restrictions that apply to that.
I just saw reuse school building, village, people live in there, so, okay, thank you.
Sure. And then a number of things that were included in your housing strategy as far as what were considered actions, planning and regulatory reform. This included a review of the existing bylaws and regulations, sewer extensions, and the wastewater facilities plan. The Community Preservation Act, and I don't know where that stands. Is that something that's still under consideration, or is that much been?
We voted on it probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, it's probably even longer than that now, and the town didn't pass it, and nobody's brought it back up as a
Okay.
warrant item to bring to town meeting,
okay.
right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it was 2005. The Board of
2005,
Selectmen
okay.
unanimously disapproved, or unanimously, what they didn't want it voted on. They unanimously, they didn't disapprove it because it wasn't an approval thing, but it was they recommended against. That's what it was, I'm sorry.
Okay. And there's no consideration of
Not that
bringing
I
it
know
back?
of. I would love to see it looked at. I think it's a great thing for a community like ours.
Well, it is a source of funds that people have used in other communities to support housing rehabilitation.
Right, and buy.
Renovation.
What is it exactly?
Community,
PA is,
the Community Preservation Act?
yeah, basically you, increase taxes by a percentage between 1% and 3%,
It's,
something like that.
well, it's a surcharge on mortgages.
It's not a tax.
So a new house that's purchased and mortgaged, you have flexibility as far as setting what the percentage would be. It's a maximum of 3%, I believe, of
Yes.
what would be the total of the mortgage. And the state will also
Matches.
contribute funding.
Doesn't match anymore.
Oh, it doesn't matter?
No,
Came out,
no.
it was matched.
Okay, when we were going for it, it was a matching.
No, not anymore. It's varies by, I think,
You're correct.
Yeah, it varies by its set of criteria, also governed by whether you go for the 3% maximum of what you're taking from town, and there's a whole set of criteria as what they determine what they're gonna match for your town. And essentially, it's another tax on the people. Really more of a savings account to go towards community preservation efforts, but when it comes down to town meeting floor and you're asking for it, it's a tax. So it goes through 3 different sections. Use, one being affordable housing, one being like parks and recreation or something like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
And another historic preservation.
Right.
And, but yeah, that's another tax on the town.
And when is it assessed, like, when is it collected? Is it collected annually, or is it collected at point of refinance, when you get a mortgage, like?
No, I believe the state portion of the funds, where that matching money came from, is from real estate transactions.
Right.
But the 1 and 3%, I believe, is from your property tax.
So your property tax immediately
It's-
goes
yeah,
up?
it's added to your
One-
property.
one-
That's-
It's an increase in the percentage of your payment,
Yeah.
Percentage of assessed value or percentage of your?
percentage of what you pay. It's not an increase in tax, it's a, what did you call it? I'm sorry.
It's a
Surcharge.
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 on your property tax.
On your property tax, okay. got it.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Anywhere from 0.5% to 3%.
Okay, thanks for explaining.
There, I think, between 80 and 100 communities in Massachusetts that have adopted it. The next slides go through some of the elements of your action plan from the affordable housing strategy. This includes implementing Chapter 40R, establishing a housing coordination function in the Office of the Planning Board, applying for grants, informing developers of senior housing development opportunities. Number of other items which I won't go through in detail. What I guess I would ask you to do, though, is if you could maybe review those, and if there were any thoughts that you might have about strategies, whether they're ones in the old plan that you think are entirely invalid, or maybe there would be additional items, additional strategies that you think would be appropriate. I will be coming back to you with my recommendations, and, you know, hopefully we'll be able to have some, I'll get your input as far as what makes sense. But that would be before we finalize the plan. Yes.
So the question, so it says implement Chapter 40R. So talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Well, it would first involve identifying locations for 40R. What that means, though, is that you would agree to a streamlined permitting process. You would potentially get funding support from the state, depending on the type of project that might be considered for the 40R site. And you would be required to have a certain portion of that development reserved for subsidized housing. But you get basically assistance from the state to support the development of that project, which could involve other types of uses. Doesn't necessarily have to be all housing. Could be a mixed-use development as well. But there would be some share of the property that would be used for housing and would have to meet the SHI percentages that would be required by the state.
Gotcha. That's, so, okay, thanks for, that's kind of what I thought it was, but thanks for explaining that. So, I have another comment, but I can wait till you're done getting through this.
And this is going back to a comment that you made earlier. Some of the locations that had been identified as possibly suitable for subsidized housing, the Tri-Town Drive-In, which has been developed, the Electric Avenue Drive-In, which has not, Lunenburg Estates, which my understanding is this is something that's in process right now. At 1229 Massachusetts Avenue, is that correct?
Is it behind Stone Farm?
1229 Mass Ave.
Is that Stone Farm? Is that what you just said, Matthew?
Is that behind Stone Farm?
I don't think so. I think
I'm sorry, I'm incorrect. I'm referring to Lunenburg Village.
Oh, Lunenburg Village, that's over on Whalum Road?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and they've changed their name to Luxury Apartments.
I saw that on your agenda tonight.
Yeah.
The
So
next
it's
slide
Whalum.
shows projects that are currently moving forward, as we'd already discussed, Tri-Town Landing. This is called now Lunenburg Luxury Apartments,
No, Whalum Luxury Apartments at
Whalum.
250 Whalum Road.
Whalum Luxury Apartments. The Hollis Hills project, and also I know you're working with Chantel on the Village District bylaw, which could allow conversion of certain units in the Village District from single-family to multifamily. Now, one of the things that your building inspector pointed out to me when I met with him a couple of weeks ago, the project now referred to as Whalum Luxury Apartments involves 120 units, 5 buildings, 24 units, 1 building per year for the next 5 years. Assuming that a certain proportion of those units are reserved as SHI or affordable housing, all of the units could qualify
Right.
to meet your SHI requirement.
Yeah, I believe the last I knew, he was planning to do the 3-to-1 mix, which with the 80% median qualification, so that would qualify,
Well,
all 100% inclusion.
if we can be certain that this is a plan that is going forward,
We'll know over the next month, probably.
Yeah, September 24th, they're in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals to get approval. So-
okay. Well, this would be essentially the solution to your, meeting your housing goals.
For the next 5 years.
Because you're talking about 24 units per year over 5 years. And you really only have to produce
Do
the
20.
20. But then in addition to that, you've got the Tri-Town Landing project, the Hollis Hills project, which I believe is moving forward. There've been some
They're
bumps in the
still,
road.
yeah, they're
but-
still,
And then there's the Village District bylaw, which would presumably allow for a few additional units.
and there's 9 houses being built on Elmwood right now.
And what's,
It's not clear that they'll have any type of affordability.
Single-family homes.
No, there's no subsidized, but it's a development.
so, those are some of the opportunities that you've got, and we want to be able to document that. The next steps that we're going to go through, as I said, I've completed the needs assessment. We're refining the affordable housing goals and production schedule, and a lot of that's going to depend on whether these other projects that we were just talking about keep moving forward. I'll develop a draft implementation strategy, and then I'd like to come back here in October and present a draft plan with some of our proposed strategies. I can get material to you in advance of the meeting, so you have an opportunity to review it and could be prepared to give me input at that time. Then we'll finalize the plan. Because this is a housing production plan that is supposed to show the support of the community, it should have the planning board approval and also Board of Selectmen approval. And then we would submit it to DHCD for review and their final approval. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So first, regarding the schedule, you mentioned in September, there's 2 bullets here: development of an updated affordable housing goals with production schedule and implementation strategy. Are those going to be done by, in conjunction, planning board and MRPC, or what is the plan on that?
The plan is whatever you think you would like to do. And I want to make this as easy for you as possible. We can come up with draft recommendations and submit them to the board in September, or we can put the complete plan together and come to you in October, but make sure that you get it in advance of the meeting so you have an opportunity for input.
So I think it's great to have the MRPC's help. I think your expertise will be really valuable. I think it's also important that the board and the town get a chance to really discuss this and hash this out, because it's a really important issue to the town.
Sure.
So I would say if you, and Joanna, you can.
I'm listening.
We got a lot going on here, but from my perspective, I think it makes sense to have you come to us sooner with something less final.
Okay.
And maybe participate in a discussion of the board, where we can sort of talk about some of our goals. The public can come and, well, it may not the first one might not be an official public hearing. People can come and provide, their thoughts on the topic. But give us a little more time to digest it and understand how different stakeholders feel about it. And so that when you do come with a final thing, it's something that we've really had time to put some thought into. I know you guys do a great job regardless, but it'll be more likely to reflect the interests in ideas and whatnot of the town I think
that makes complete sense. Different communities have had different approaches to this, and if you're able to provide input as we go along in the process, that would be excellent, and I would appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I think we're probably, as a board, probably need to find out what as a board we think. We may, as individuals, have opinions. We may, as individuals, be kind of still getting our arms around the issue, but I think it'll be this is a great opportunity you're providing us with to accelerate that process and drive it towards something.
Certainly. Well, and as I said too, this is going to feed into your master plan. So, I think it's important that you participate in this process as much as you can as we move forward, because it's going to have further ramifications as we go into the next stage in developing the master plan.
Sure, and besides the master plan, which is of course important, I mean, if we're going to implement Chapter 40R and designate areas as, either with special zoning or whatever you do to say, expedited permitting or whatever it is to say, we're looking for this type of housing development here, something like this here. That's going from an execution standpoint. That's, even if we were to do something like that, that would require town meeting, Board of Selectmen approval. Can planning board do that with a public hearing? And what's the process for actually doing something like that?
Well, I think we're talking about some preliminary thinking about possible locations without necessarily making it official. I think this.
So the production plan doesn't require the actual. We could just say we're thinking about implementing Chapter 40R,
correct.
And that's good enough for the HPP.
That's correct. It's the same as the idea that you have what are reasonably realistic plans to develop certain projects on out into a 5-year horizon. but you have no guarantee that that's going to happen. This is a plan. This isn't, you're not certifying or guaranteeing that, that a particular site is going to be developed in such and such a way. You can't really do that if you don't have a developer already on board. So I think, you know, it may be something that, you know, we can clarify as preliminary thinking, as the kind of direction that the planning board might be moving as all of the necessary pieces come into play. But it doesn't have to be a guaranteed action on the part of the planning board or the town that a 40R
I gotcha.
area has been designated. It may be something that can be defined as an intent on the part of the planning board and the town, but I think that would be sufficient.
Do you have any more questions?
I could keep going, but I wanted to take a breath. Give other people. Damon said he wants me to keep going.
No questions at this point in time.
What do you got?
Yeah, so I know it's getting late here. Question about the 10% SHI. So all right, just I want to try to explain because I think it's important for people in Lunenburg to understand. So, you know, as you laid out here, you know, in 2010 we had roughly 4,000 year-round housing units.
Correct.
And basically, the prize we get as a community if we have 400 units that can be counted towards our subsidized housing inventory is that 40Bs are then reviewable in the same manner as any other development.
No, that's
Okay.
You're getting ahead of yourself there.
Okay.
You have to be shown that you're making progress toward that 400. That's why.
Sure. That's
you're-
HPP. I'm talking about going beyond HPP. Let's say our town already had 1,100 units in our SHI. We had 4,000 units. So I'm sorry, yes, HPP, I understand. We can get a safe harbor or whatever it's
Yeah,
called.
and you do have control over.
And then you do have control.
permitting
So we can get
process.
control without doing it. But that requires continual, what's the renewal cycle on the HPP?
It's a 5-year plan.
5 years. Okay, I got you. There's another way you can sort of have control over your zoning and permitting, which is if you already exceed 10 plus
Certainly.
%. Okay, gotcha. And that's what I want to talk about briefly because
Then you wouldn't need an HPP.
then you wouldn't need an HPP
Because
anymore.
you've achieved your 10%. The goal is 10%.
Yep.
But in terms of what the HPP is intended to accomplish, it's to show that you're making progress
Yes.
toward that 10%.
And as long as you're showing you're making that good progress, you get the benefit.
Of the safe
Correct.
harbor.
Obviously. So I just want folks to kind of understand a little bit of the numbers here because I think
Okay.
it's interesting. If you know, so the way that, and I'm glad, I want to do this with the gentleman from MRPC
Yeah,
here
no,
because he can
absolutely.
correct me when I provide misinformation. So first of all, if you're out of the HPP coverage, you're in that, you know, we're protected because we have the 10% plus. My understanding is that doesn't go back 10 years. That's like, you know, on the day where you're reviewing that 40B, you need to be 10% plus your SHI. Is that right?
I'm not sure that, no, I don't think that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
If you've hit your 10%,
Yep.
you don't need an HPP.
Right. But you can fall.
If you haven't hit your 10%, then you need an improved HPP that shows you're making a good faith effort to achieve
Achieve
that
it.
10%. But you don't have to produce that 10%, you only have to produce 0.5% of the total
Yep.
on an annual basis.
stay under the-
Which in Lunenburg's case would be 20 units.
28. So the condition I'm talking about is we don't have HPP filed. We're exactly at 10%. Exactly. Right on, you know.
Yeah.
A builder builds a house, it's not affordable. my understanding is someone can come in with a 40B at that point.
No. The calculation is made every 10 years.
It's made every 10 years? Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that's good to know.
I understand what you're saying, because the numbers will change every time there's a new house
Yes.
built in Lunenburg, whether it's a subsidized housing unit or it's non-subsidized. But the calculation of what your target needs to be is based on the decennial census.
Okay.
So right now, it's all based on 2010. Doesn't matter how many homes have been built in town since then. The only thing that's going to be counted, that's taken into account, is what is in your SHI inventory.
Gotcha. Until 2020.
Until 2020, and then the clock resets.
Okay, so just to make crystal clear, folks watching, if there are anyone watching, it's on YouTube, so you can watch this forever, I guess. What we're talking about in terms of safe harbor or control of our zoning or protection from 40B is, there's, when 40Bs come up, sometimes they're good projects that people propose, but it's always a little disconcerting for people when the rules that they understand are in place regarding zoning in their neighborhoods or the places that they frequent in
Are
town.
no longer applicable.
What's that?
That they don't apply, or
Where
at
the
least you
rules
don't have
don't-
control over them at the local level.
Exactly, where the rules they expect to apply don't apply, and that's always disconcerting. And that's kind of the incentive why, well, it's one of the incentives. There's other incentives like to have a diverse housing mix, which is, a worthy goal in itself. But that's one of the reasons why it's, this is important to think about. And based on the numbers MRPC brought with us, 2010 census, just to reiterate, 4,037. Our totals are likely to be about 164 subsidized housing inventory units. To be 10% would be 400 units, roughly. And as he mentioned, it may be that the units going into Whalum, 30 affordable units, 90 market rate units, rental, that would take us from 166 to 280 something, 164 to 284. And that's, in addition, so first of all, that's going to do through the HPP, even though we haven't hit the 10%, that shows excellent progress.
Correct.
But also as a town, this is not, I guess my big point is this is not an unachievable goal. That we've made tremendous strides if you look at the progress in the last 10 years in terms of increasing the diversity of housing in Lunenburg, making it an affordable place to live through these programs.
Right.
And, controlling, having better control of our zoning. We're not 100%, what the state says is a good goal, but we're making good progress there. I guess the other thing I'd mention, in case it was lost, he did a great job explaining to us what the meaning of affordable unit is, 80% of median income. I think I did something on my calculator, it was like $54,000. If you make $54,000 or less as a family, that's a combined family income.
Family of four.
You'd be eligible to enjoy the direct benefits of the housing that's available, whether it was a purchase opportunity or a rental opportunity. And the other thing I'll mention is that, so we talk about 10% of 4,000, let's say, being 400. In terms of actual, depending on if you go rental units, as he was saying, you can actually get a 9-to-1 or a 3-to-1 mix depending on the covenant on the affordable units. But let's say you use the 3-to-1 mix. Essentially what that means is that roughly, if you needed 400 units in your SHI, that really may be about 100 affordable units, which is not a lot of affordable. Out of 4,000, that's really like 2.5% or maybe 3% because you're growing the unit cost. So I just wanted to, sorry to hold you hostage here,
right.
but I needed you here to correct me if I was wrong, and it's a good time to bring this up.
Sure.
I just want people to start to understand some of the math behind this topic, and that's, I could go on, but
Well, and who was the gentleman, Dick, what was his last name, that came and talked to us? Because that's what he said, is don't chase the 10, is chase every year your safe harbor.
Correct.
And focus on the 20, because it's very hard to get to the 10, because the numbers always go up and down, up and down.
Well,
So-
but it's also a very large number.
Right.
And 20 is a lot
Easier.
less than 200 plus, whatever.
Right. So if we now focus on that 20, make sure we're doing the paperwork for the safe harbor and getting those on the books, then we've got the 2 years, and we're striving on that, so it still creates that.
Right, and that's the state's goal for this requirement, for
Exactly.
this legislation.
the other thing I guess I want to mention, I really brought this soapbox today, huh? Is because I haven't had, this is a great opportunity to bring this up, I haven't really bored you to death about the inclusionary zoning workshop I attended.
Don't need to.
6 months ago. No, but inclusionary zoning is an important concept. The idea of inclusionary zoning is to help you and I want to introduce the board and the public to this because it's something we should talk about as we're doing this HPP, is that you have things built in your bylaws that in general provide incentives in terms of the zoning in exchange for a commitment of the builder to build a certain percentage of affordable units in their project. So for example, any simple example, I'm just making it up off the top of my head, we might have, say, oh, you can only have, 4 units for every 2 acres. But you can have 8 units for every 2 acres if one of them is affordable. That's a just made up example of
Right.
an inclusionary zoning principle.
And that's a
Yeah, but-
strategy that we're actually incorporating into some of the housing production plans that we've produced so far. And if that's something that Lunenburg would be interested in, I think that makes...
I believe we have that it either has
You
to
do.
be senior or
Okay.
low income. A
Okay.
percentage has to be one or the other. The developer can decide.
So you've
Like
already
Emerald
incorporated
Place.
this into your bylaws?
Yeah, Emerald
Okay.
Place is over 55, and they designated that so many units would be over 55. So we do have that written.
So we do have some, I think we need to review it in terms of actually contributing towards the state SHI for a couple of reasons. So you're right, we have some good stuff there. One thing, when I looked at our housing bylaws last year, just in my own, it seemed like we have a lot of options for people to come in, and there's a lot of them that, there's like, I don't know, let's say 5 different ways you can do a subdivision, and one of them's inclusionary. And so there's a lot of, it's not something I would rely on for consistently producing units that would count towards our subsidized housing inventory as currently done. Now, maybe we like it that way, maybe we don't. I think it's worth thinking about. Another example, as you mentioned, the alternative between the senior housing and the affordable. The senior housing doesn't, as I understand it, unless it's also affordable, count towards our SHI. So if we're looking at, if our goal is to use inclusionary zoning to provide, economic diversity in housing and to contribute towards our SHI, I think we need to review what we have for effectiveness, because although there's some good stuff there, there's so many choices that it's easy to, it's not clear it's going to be effective.
I'm wondering if we can add affordability component to the new center zoning for the apartments. An increased density, so that would be increased numbers in a smaller area.
This is in regard to the village district bylaw?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was just saying with the 40R at the
Yeah.
primary school. That, if we can't do the elderly housing, is there another option we can look at for housing over there to create the walkability?
And whether if the town wanted to focus on elderly, you can do, if I understood correctly, some of the seminars I went to, you could do elderly housing with, for example, a 3 market, 1 affordable ratio. You could put a covenant, requiring it to be senior housing, and that would still contribute towards your SHI as long as as long as all the affordability stuff worked out.
That's correct. This would be rental housing?
If it were rental housing, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it were not rental housing, you could do the same thing, but it would be, only the affordable units would count towards the SHI if it's
Correct.
purchased units.
Purchased, yeah, in place of rent. Rental is all, purchased is just the units
As
themselves.
long as, I believe it's a 25% proportion of the total.
Of the total.
That is affordable.
Yeah, if you go to like, if you reduce the threshold eligibility to something like, I don't know if it's 20 or 40% of median income as opposed to 80, if you really, or maybe it's 50%, you can actually do like a 9-to-1 on rental, if I understand. But instead of being 80% median income eligibility, it's, I think maybe, it's low, it's significantly lower. I don't.
Yeah, there's a difference between what's considered low income and very low income.
Yes.
They have different ceilings that apply in that case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, any other questions for Sam? All right, well, Sam, thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
And are you going to be there tomorrow night?
No.
MRP, okay.
I'm not sure. Oh, for the commission meeting?
Yeah.
No, I won't
Okay.
be.
All right.
Okay.
Nice seeing you. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
hard work,
And-
and I look forward to working with you
And
on this.
So we will plan on coming back in September, is that?
That's what Nathan was looking at. I would say, looking at our September agenda, probably the last,
24.
the 24th.
Okay,
I'm sorry, 22nd.
September 22nd?
September 22nd.
Yeah, 22nd at the Ritter, it says.
September 22nd at the Ritter.
Okay. All right, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you. Okay. Again, thanks so much, Sam. It was nice seeing you. And now we can start our planning board agenda. Minutes approval.
And Sam is very regularly in attendance at the various seminars that we can attend periodically.
I would accept a motion to approve the minutes of August 11, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, I would do another motion for August 11, 14th, the informational meeting on 1259 Mass Ave.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and those, of course, were scanned to us, and we had already read them. Committee reports, MRPC, I have no report. Our meeting is tomorrow night. I don't know if I'll be able to attend.
We skipped topic 5. Was that intentional?
Oh, I'm sorry, we did.
Because we lost.
It's because the audience left
Because the audience left.
I apologize. Is that what they were here for, was the village?
I believe so.
All right, because I was confused on why this was on the agenda.
Well, we had originally planned it, and I guess that didn't get communicated tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, if you look at our original, like our agenda from last week, it was scheduled to come up.
We got halfway through and we decided to pick it up at the next meeting.
We decided to pick it up at September 15th, exact.
Right, that's what I thought, is we moved it to September.
I didn't, I thought.
Well,
the
and we
next-
didn't
Well,
even.
that was our
we didn't
workshop,
even
not
move-
discussion.
Right, we didn't even move, our goal was to have the meeting last week and then the public meeting this week, but the public meeting hasn't even been rescheduled. We extended the workshop to next week, but, so we don't even have a schedule right now for the public meeting, which I think is okay. I think it's going to be in October sometime.
Okay.
Although, yeah, it's kind of
Because
sucks.
that's what, when I saw it, I thought, oh, Chantel was gonna read out the stuff from the easel. That's what I thought this was, but then she said Chantel wasn't coming, so I didn't know why
So,
those were dates that,
so maybe could we reschedule the public hearing for September 29th?
I'm not sure I'll be here that day. I'll be available.
That's
this
the right,
village
so that's-
bylaw,
So maybe we should,
I guess I'm going with two different things. The village district bylaw, public discussion, is that on the bylaw we're drafting or on the charrette information we did last week?
it's on the bylaw we're drafting, basically, at this
bylaw.
point.
Okay, I would not put a date on that till we have finished a rough draft of the bylaw.
I think that's a good, fair point.
You know what I mean? We have a workshop next month, the 15th.
Yep.
So let's see where we are on the 15th, and once we have a draft that we say, okay,
Yep.
we're ready to present, then we can pick a date, instead of just keep pushing this out and it gets missed. That
Okay.
would be my recommendation.
I totally agree.
Okay, perfect. So that will come off the agenda until our draft bylaw is created, and then we'll have a public hearing on that draft bylaw.
Yeah, and apologies to
people
anyone
that
who
waited for
were
this, I
waiting for
feel
this whole thing.
bad.
Yeah,
I'm gonna send
very
Jeff an
sorry.
email tomorrow.
Feel free, that September 5th meeting is dedicated to discussing that bylaw. It's
The 15th
the
workshop.
15th,
Yep.
although it's not a public hearing, all our meetings are open to the public,
Exactly.
except for the executive sessions, which this isn't one of.
No.
So for those who waited, and we'll save you a nice seat in the Ritter Building, and very sorry, we did not get to that tonight.
Okay, so that's all set, and that's coming off our agenda until our bylaw is drafted. Minutes are done, MRPC is done. Nathan, School Building Committee report.
I don't have any new report. Obviously, the construction continues. The abutters meeting is coming up still, same time I reported it would be last time. I'll tell you in a second what that is.
I have that in my calendar. Are you looking?
And it's again, as we talked about last time, it's dedicated towards landscaping. And it'll take me a minute. We can go on to the next thing it'll take me a minute to find that. So that's all I have from the school building committee.
Okay, and then we go into Damon Reuse Committee.
Have not met since last time.
Ken, MJTC.
There was no August meeting, next meeting is in September.
Okay, Capital Planning is dormant. Reuse, well, I don't want to, Jeff's request at the beginning for Matthew to be the liaison for the Agricultural Commission. Matt, more than welcome to sit on the Agricultural Commission, just like I sit on Lake Shirley. I'm the president of the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation, but the charter has specific committees that the planning board is to sit on by the charter. And that's where, like I said, we're all on 2 or 3 and you're not on any. So by all means, I think it's great that you want to be on agricultural, but if you could also pick up one of the chartered ones that we're chartered to be on would be greatly appreciated. Just as, like I said, I'm passionate about Lake Shirley, so I serve on that board.
Is that a chartered commission?
Lake Shirley?
Yeah?
No.
No, okay.
No. Either is the agricultural, that's my point.
Well, it was last year.
No, it wasn't. You asked if
Well,
you
it was
could.
on the,
Right, because you asked if you could.
Liaison is just someone who attends and relays information. You're not a voting member of the board. The liaison isn't a member of the Agricultural Commission. Just like Paula Bertram's our liaison to the selectmen, she doesn't vote, she just relays information.
I'm not sure anybody suggested it was.
I'm just making sure you know what liaison is. It's
yeah.
not the commitment of actually being on the board.
But by all means, if you want to be the liaison on the Agricultural Commission, that's totally up to you to do.
It's fine, thank you.
That's totally acceptable for you to do. Okay, number 8, new business development status, Tri-Town. Update was scanned to the board. Let me see what we got. Did the minutes come back to me?
No,
Is there a question on them? Oh, okay.
Just a reminder, the abutters meeting, which I think is open to anyone, but especially abutters, for the middle high school, is at Thomas Pacios Cafeteria, September 4th, 2014, 6 PM to 7 PM, and focus is going to be on landscaping. But if you have other issues you want to talk about, I'm sure they will entertain them as well.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Number 8 we were on was Tri-Town Landing. You all got the email. As all of you maybe know, we are looking towards starting construction of building number 4 at Tri-Town Landing this fall. They had their first technical review meeting a couple weeks back, and they're doing, it was suggested that we do a flow test on the site for baseline data. We completed significant improvements to the line coming into the Lunenburg from Fitchburg while constructing building number 3. Flow test after that work were completed, Mackenzie Engineering, and showed a significant improvement. And their next, Bob Cummings, who is doing our fire suppression design, would like to conduct the flow test on-site Tuesday, September 9th. So that's all they had to report. Then we go down to middle school, high school, no report. Highfield Village, no report. Force Corp, no report. Definitive plan for Elmwood. They're hauling out gravel, remove asbestos materials from Sugar Shack is what they're working on this week. Okay, White Woods, Mass Ave update. Council's response was scanned to the board. Does everybody have that? Anybody want to talk about that? Anything they want to?
What's that, Joanna?
White Woods, that was the 10 inches.
Oh, yeah, I think we should definitely talk about that.
Okay.
So we got word back from council.
Can't do it.
So we need, I don't know. Guess we need a public hearing, and I guess, if possible, if we can schedule that, get that in for September 8th, if it's not too short a notice.
I believe that Marjorie's working to have a public hearing scheduled,
Oh, great.
but that's something that the developer has to ask on our agenda for.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll,
They'll probably get on that then. Okay.
exactly.
Yep.
So I think they're working with Marjorie to get on there.
So it's good that Chantel, had us look into that.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's legally the right thing to do, so. Nice having the professional planning advice around once in a while.
Yes, thank God she was here, because we would have just approved it. No, really.
No, I know, I agree.
Anybody need a copy of it, or are you good?
Nope, I got it.
Okay. So we will make sure that Marjorie gets them, works with them to get them on the agenda. Emerald Place, we've already talked about. The solar was scanned to the board. You saw Celeste's feedback.
Yep, thanks for distributing that.
No, not at all. So that was all set. She just wants to make sure that it doesn't become that they're hanging the excess field and whatnot, so I'm sure they're gonna work with her. Whalum Luxury Apartments, they changed the name from Lunenburg Village, which I know, Matthew, you had wanted them to do, so there's a win. They're now gonna be called Whalum Luxury Apartments at 250 Whalum Road, and they are coming in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals on September 24th, 2014 at 7 PM.
So it was 7 PM, September 24th?
7 PM, September 24th, here in the Joseph F. Bellata Room. So, and anybody's welcome to go, and it will be televised, I'm sure. So, that we can go see. All right.
I'm sorry, did you say that there was a desire not to have the field next to the solar plant, hayed?
No, they want
They
it.
want to
Oh, they
hate.
want it hayed?
They want to
Oh,
make sure that they
okay.
just don't let it
Good,
become
right.
overgrown, yeah. That was Celeste's thing, and she wanted to make sure, I believe, there was a couple people that have hated, and they wanted to make sure that that continued. Okay. Action files, 1255, we looked at, Whalen, we just talked about. Leominster Shirley Road, the cell tower, no report. Master Plan Economic Development Joint Meeting. This was the meeting that we sent out looking for feedback. The sewer responded. So Marjorie's looking for exactly what you want to do. Do you want to have a workshop and invite boards? Do you want to have them come to one of our planning meetings? What is it you're looking to do to seek their feedback? We asked for it in writing, they didn't give it. And so now we're going to invite them. Do you want to invite them to a meeting or have a specific workshop?
I think we should do a workshop.
Yeah, and, so, yeah, obviously Sewer did provide some feedback.
Yes.
Another tidbit, Chantel said she thought John would like to attend that,
John Hume?
to be able to provide input as he crafted a lot of the element. In the sewer committee thing, yeah, the question is, do we want to do a public hearing, and do we want to do it a different day than we do the workshop kind of thing? So I think, personally, I think, yeah, it'd be good to do a public hearing, but maybe let's just do the workshop with the boards first, and then see how that goes, and go from there with the public hearing or whatever.
Okay.
Because I don't think it has to be adopted at town, I don't believe the master plan element doesn't need to be approved by town meeting.
No.
So from a timetable standpoint, I think it's good that we're keeping this and moving it along, but like, you know, if we end up doing this joint board meeting in October, and then we do a public hearing in November,
Okay, so when do you want, so we can do a workshop, that's fine. I'm very happy with that. We can invite them at 5:30 and go into our meeting at 6:30. We can do however you would like, but Marjorie's just saying pick a day and tell her what day so she can invite them, or push it off the agenda.
I think we should wait till we get the village district thing locked down a little bit, but that's my opinion.
I would have gone for the off date in October, right? So the Monday that we don't have
A meeting,
a meeting.
which there's a holiday in October, right? That Monday, we can't meet on holidays. What's that,
Monday
President?
in October?
Yeah, October,
Columbus Day.
Columbus Day, is it Columbus Day?
Halloween?
So-
Because it's a big wedding weekend.
Columbus Day is Monday, October
The 12th?
October 13th.
Right,
yeah.
so-
So we should have our meeting normally that day.
Right, so that would be our first Monday meeting, so that would be canceled, so we could do the 20th as a workshop,
We have the 6th option too, October 6th.
or October 6th, yeah?
I'm supposed to be having my reuse committee meetings the first Monday of the month.
First Monday?
Which hasn't been happened as competition lately, but
But that's okay.
Yeah.
So how about the 20th, October 20th
Sure.
would be, and we will invite all of the,
Well, the 20th would be our regular scheduled meeting.
no, 27th.
Where are we going to reschedule the 13th meeting?
We don't reschedule them.
Oh, we don't? We
No.
just skip them?
Yep.
Oh, never mind.
Usually if they fall on a holiday, we just,
Okay, so the 20th then?
would be the workshop
for
for the master planning economic development, and we're gonna ask Marjorie to invite all the chairs, or the chairs and boards.
yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me. Oh, no, just, I guess have them send one or two representatives per board.
Well, why don't we invite anybody who wants to come on the boards?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be lucky, I think, if we get a representative from each board.
Right. So anybody on boards, welcome to come to the workshop, and it'll be at 6:30 on Monday, October 20th. Perfect.
Yeah, so if that's, yeah, I mean, if we need, we have some slack in October, so if we end up needing to schedule a non-Monday meeting because of village district or
Right.
whatever, we've got some space there, I guess.
So I'm just putting this in the calendar. And that will be at the Ritter. Want to see if we can get downstairs? See if downstairs is available, if there's more room than trying to fit them in the conference room. And that is at 6:30 PM. Okay. So notices and communications, the biggest one we had was the, zoning board of appeals
For luxury
for the luxury, yes, for
apartments,
apartments.
Whalum luxury, yep.
What about the gasoline station and convenience store?
Yeah, did you see that?
790 Mass Ave.
790 Mass Ave, which is the Stone Farm store.
Docks?
Yeah, the old docks, is, evidently it's sold, and they're seeking a special permit to construct a new site for gasoline and convenience store,
Does that come before the ZBA or before us?
ZBA.
Yeah.
Right now, it's at the zoning board of appeals. Also, 63 Peninsula Ave, Mark Erickson removing existing dock, installing, existing deck, installing new patio. Order of conditions, 33 Birch Island, 43 Hemlock, and 1625. Conservation Commission certificate of compliance was 619 Reservoir Road, 110 Old Farm Road. Then we have Wednesday, September 10th, Zoning Board of Appeals, the Lunenburg, this is the Gary Archer, 70 Main, looking to construct at 79 Mass Ave. So that's all in.
Yeah, about the gas station, it was interesting timing. I mean, with that, so, a couple of questions about that one. Would that fall into the village district outline that we were considering at our last meeting? I know it's not.
As far as location, yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
So.
Right now, we don't allow
Good, because we
use,
can't
so it's
include
easy.
Correct?
Yes.
Right, well, it's allowed by special permit, I think.
Is he keeping the structure?
When they come to us for special permit then? I
Actually,
feel like it's not allowed at all.
in limited business, it's not allowed, yeah,
Structure,
that's
what
probably
is it?
right.
Okay, okay.
So,
Well, and I think they're gonna look for a demo. I think they'll probably delete the building,
Yeah.
demo the building.
So that, yeah, that's my concern, is that, two things. I mean, I've nothing against gas stations per se. So I guess, if I were on the ZBA, and I guess is a planning board member who's working on the village district bylaw, who started to gather input from the town about what they're interested in. I don't know what the historic status of that building in particular is. I don't know, Damon, if you happen to know any of the history of that building.
I don't personally know any historic significance of that building. I could be missing something, but not that I know.
Nothing, okay. So that would be, that's one thing, I'm sure that probably will come through the demo delay, it'll go before the historic commission. I mean, I think, personally, as we look at the village district bylaw, I'm very much interested in kind of a much stronger historic protective bylaw in the historic district, which would cover that area when that's put in place. So that's one issue. The other issue is design bylaw. I don't know if our current design bylaw technically covers the limited retail area. I know we implemented it for the commercial district. That said, given its proximity to town center, given the fact that it's use only permitted by special permit, me personally, I would urge the ZBA to require, similar adherence to the design bylaw that was done in the really excellent job down at Honey Farms, where I've heard just everybody comes up to me about Honey Farms. I mean, people who don't usually talk to me about planning board say that, that they did a really nice job there. Whatever you did with your bylaw really worked well. We got a nice product there in terms of the look of the Honey Farm. So those two things. I mean, I think the historic preservation issue, I hope that they work closely with Historic Commission to find something appropriate, find an appropriate way to address that if it's indeed an issue. And I would like to see, I think it would be a great addition if whatever goes in there, whether it's a gas station or whatever, complies with the design bylaw. So that's my 2 cents, I don't know.
No, absolutely. And we'll watch it and see what, where it's going, what it's doing, because at some point it's gonna come in front of us. So, once the zoning board decides how they're gonna use it, well, it'll still come first for development plan review, through the zoning board, tech review meetings, all that stuff still happens.
Before they approve or after they approve the special permit?
They might approve the special permit, but then we would have the plan, we would do the directives, and one of our directives could be they need to follow the design bylaw.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I mean, I don't know exactly, like, if we could do that, that'd be great. Do they have directives in the ZBA, or do they condition their special permit?
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I think just to make things, kind of help bake in the town's wishes on that, I would encourage them to bake design bylaw into their directives for that project if they issue it. But, I wish the applicant and the town, I hope it's a really good process all around. I'm not against the project. That's something I think will increase the success and appreciation of the work.
Perfect. Okay, all done with notices and, I'm sorry. Tomorrow night, Board of Selectmen meeting, it's on the agenda, they're meeting at 5:30 to interview the 2 candidates, one at 5:30 to 6:15, the next one 6:15 to 7. Anybody, we're all invited. I sent you guys an email last week. Anybody who would like to come, it's at 5:30. So, and you can meet the two candidates. Okay?
Is just out of curiosity, so what's the structure of the meetings? We can meet the candidates. What's the decision-making process at this point? There's the committee that was appointed.
Right, I'm unclear because when I was speaking with the town manager on this is something they've never done with the police chiefs, fire chiefs. Again, it's a new procedure the selectmen have decided to undertake in this process. So Kerry really doesn't know, because as a committee, we've kind of designated our number one candidate, number two. So we would hope, well, we had hoped 2 weeks ago we were going to be able to start job offering, but then we wanted to wait because the selectmen had asked to interview them. So I'm hoping that they're going to honor, what the committee invading. I mean, the committee was myself, Toby Bacasa, Debbie Seeley, she was on the planning board a while ago, Dave Matthews, a former board of selectmen, and Kerry herself. So I think a lot of covers, a lot of area was
Yes, it's a
covered.
really good group,
Yeah, so hopefully that'll fall through, and then we'll be able to job offer, and they'll give their notice wherever, and within 2 to 3 weeks, we will have a land use director sitting here next to us.
Great. Yeah, are you going tomorrow?
Yes, I'm going to go to the meeting.
Yeah, I can't make, I have a
Yeah, I will be
appointment
there.
already. but-
Yeah, no worry, I just want to include.
No, thanks for spreading that around.
So our next meetings,
Actually, part of the selectmen meeting, right, so it'll be broadcast.
I don't know if they're going to broadcast it because it's starting at 5:30, so I don't know if they're broadcasting that or if that's kind of more of a relaxed meet and greet type thing, sitting at that table versus him in front of a podium and they're whipping questions. I don't know the format because it's never happened before.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, September 8th, Town Hall will be meeting at 6:30. September 15th, we'll be meeting at 6:30, which is our Village District Bylaw Workshop. It's not a scheduled meeting. Public is welcome. It's to continue to work on creating the Village District Bylaw. And then September 22nd is our scheduled Planning Board meeting at the Ritter Building. Do I have any public comment? We lost the public. Do I have any board comment?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I think we might want to try to structure the meeting so we can be more time efficient by being better planning around our agendas, making the information that we have to review in advance of the meeting available to the public in advance of the meeting, so we don't have to in detail read everything that we get in advance, because basically a lot of this stuff is all repeat for us because we've already seen it and we've already gone through it all. And then set an agenda with timelines where we tell our speakers that are coming that, we get the material in advance, and we give an estimated amount of time for the duration. So we say, you're going to come and speak about this particular thing, and you anticipate it's going to take 20 minutes, so we'll schedule you for a 30-minute block. And then we can try to adhere to the time a little bit, so the general public that comes to our meetings can look at our time allotments for our agenda and anticipate a little bit better when their slot's going to be made available. I've been to the other town meetings, and the other committees seem to do a little bit better than us at efficient use of time. I just would like us to maybe talk about it and brainstorm some ideas on how we could improve that, but not violate any of the open meeting laws, because I know we can't just get material and say, here's my question, here's my question, here's my question, without reviewing it if nobody has seen it. But if we do make it available to the public in advance, then instead of reading a 30-page document, line by line, word by word, we can just go to our issues with the document because we've already reviewed it and have our questions to present. It's just a thought about making the meetings more efficient. We've already taken steps towards making the plans available in advance of the meeting, so we can do that too. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would welcome any way that we can make that happen.
Right. And I can ask Chantel to see, you know, what other planning boards do, because a lot of this stuff.
I touched bases with her about it.
Okay,
And she said as long as we made the material available in advance of the meeting, if there's a time allotment where it has to be made public, the material has to be made public. And whatever material we can make public prior to the meeting, you know, with the meeting notice, that material we could streamline. So we
Okay.
could review it and then just cover our issues or concerns with it, as opposed to having to basically go through and read the whole thing. And so for some of these things, like these engineering reviews, where there's lots of content, you know, we get the material, we read the material, then we get the engineering review, we go through the engineering review, and I assume you guys do the same, but I go through the whole thing and I write my notes down of like, well, what about this, what about this, what about this, so I have my questions to ask. And then we have the public meeting, and we go through the whole thing, and I don't have any questions from 1 to 27. I have a question on 28, 29, and then 45. And so going through all that stuff, if nobody has any comments, it just kind of consumes a lot of time, and if the materials were made in advance, we wouldn't really have to do that. So it's an opportunity to streamline the meeting. And we might get more involvement and participation if it was a little more streamlined, and people could come with their own concerns, having had access to the material in advance as well. You know, somebody like Dave Rogers might show up and say, hey, you know, I read the engineering report and I really have a concern about this assertion that he's making. So, you know, just a thought that I thought I would share.
no, and I think it's a great idea. I think it's a fabulous idea. We've tried that, and actually we have more, because like even the, for example, the Chase Road or 50 Elmwood, you know, he's cleaning up debris. Well, he faxes that every week to the planning board, and then I don't remember who asked that they want to see that and be able to read it. Like, I don't think I need to know weekly that Stone, that Elmwood Place ripped down the fence, now they're taking the Sugar Shack down, now they're, unless there's an issue or something that's not following schedule. I think that's kind of the planning office's job function, that we don't
Yeah,
have
like I
to.
said, as long as the material is made public,
Right.
then I think it's fine.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. And hopefully Chantel can work with Marjorie to streamline that for us, because I think that would be great, and I think Marjorie would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I think, so I agree with the goal, and I think it'd be good if we can do that, and I think, you know, yeah, it would make everybody's experience better if we can put more, you know, focus on quality preparation and getting it available to the public. One thing is, though, I do think some of the things we host are inherently less predictable than others in terms of scheduling, so I think if there's elements of our agenda that have public engagement, either we want to
Well, of course, that's.
maybe backload the stuff that's kind of harder to predict and front load, you know, carve out the time if we want to have it where there's things of high public interest or whatever.
Right. Well, and that's why I moved up, because we would have people coming in for an A&R at 9 PM. And I said, that's crazy, because if we finish early, we now have to sit here till 9 PM. So I've asked that all that stuff be front-lined up to get them through and out. And that's why I always ask for public comment. We used to not do public comment up front.
Yeah, I saw that we added that to that. That's good. I
Right.
like that.
Well, because the poor public would come and have to sit for a 3-hour meeting to say, hey, I had a question 2 weeks ago. So that's why we put it in both spots. So anything I can do for the public and help is a great goal.
Yeah, I don't know. And the other thing, I think, like, to some extent, like, the really interesting public forward-looking stuff, like, I think to the degree to which we segregate those meetings, like the bylaw workshop or whatever, you know, that's good that we're doing that separate, because if someone was interested in that, they can come and get 100% interesting stuff. I mean, obviously, applying for stuff's important, but I think it's less, I mean, and
I
obviously.
think we should do more unstructured things in workshops and keep this meeting to the more structured type things that we have to do via this mechanism.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, the more routine and less forward-looking stuff, like this housing production plan, unfortunately, you know, it was great. I think it was a great presentation, great discussion. I think people were pretty tired, except for maybe me at that point. So, but that would have been a good one to just like have, you know, combined with another interesting thing, and then people could really come and get a lot of, I mean, not to say that site plan reviews aren't interesting, but it's a different kind of interesting, I guess.
Okay. Any other public comment? Any member issues? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, not to return.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Good night, Irene.